Gas Caligula, the mad emperor of Rome, on a warm August day in the year 12 CE, a child was born into the most powerful empire the world had ever known. His name was Gas Julius Caesar Germanicus, but history would remember him by another name, Caligula, a nickname meaning little boots, given to him as a boy by the Roman soldiers who adored him. For a fleeting moment he would be Rome's golden prince, but soon the boy who once charmed the legions would descend into madness, becoming one of the most infamous rulers the world has ever seen. Gas was the son of Germanicus, one of Rome's most beloved generals, and Agrippina the elder, a noble woman of immense influence. As a child, he accompanied his father on military campaigns along the Rhine, wearing a miniature soldiers' uniform, hence the affectionate name Caligula. His father's men saw in him the future of Rome, the heir to an empire that stretched from the wilds of Britain to the sands of Egypt. But tragedy struck. Early in 19 CE, Germanicus fell mysteriously ill and died under suspicious circumstances. Some whispered that Emperor Tiberius, his own great-uncle, had orchestrated the poisoning. Whether true or not, Germanicus's death sent his family into turmoil. Agrippina, fiercely protective of her children, clashed with Tiberius, and one by one Caligula's brothers and mother were exiled or executed. Only he remained. Despite this blood-soaked childhood, Caligula survived. Sent to live under the watchful eye of Tiberius on the island of Capri, he learned the dark politics of power firsthand. The island was a world of paranoia and indulgence, where Tiberius, now a reclusive and suspicious old man, surrounded himself with vice and cruel. But Caligula played the game well, hiding his true thoughts, charming the court, and waiting for his moment. In 37 CE, the old emperor died and Caligula was proclaimed the ruler of Rome. His ascension was met with an outpouring of joy. The people saw in him the son of Germanicus, a beacon of hope after Tiberius's cold, old, and distant rule. At first, Caligula did not disappoint. He granted amnesty to political prisoners, ended Tiberius' oppressive trials, and lavished gifts upon the people. Games, feasts, and public spectacles turned Rome into a city of celebration. It seemed as though a golden age had begun, but then something changed. Historians debate what exactly happened, but within the first year of his reign, Caligula suffered a severe illness. Some claim it was a fever, others that it was a bout of poisoning. Whatever it was, when he recovered, he was no longer the same man. The charming young emperor had vanished, replaced by something far more terrifying. What followed was one of the most infamous reigns in Roman history. Caligula's rule became a spectacle of extravagance, paranoia, and cruelty. He drained the empire's treasury on lavish palaces and absurdly expensive parties. He proclaimed himself a god, demanding that he be worshipped as Jupiter incarnate. Statues of himself were erected in temples, and he insisted that senators and citizens alike bow before him. His madness extended beyond mere vanity. He delighted in humiliation, forcing the great senators of Rome to grovel like slaves. He is said to have replaced the heads of statues of gods with his own likeness, and even planned to appoint his favorite horse in Cadus as a consul, a position meant for Rome's highest officials. Whether this was a true intention or merely a mockery of Rome's political elite remains debated, but it perfectly captured his disdain for tradition. His cruelty knew no bounds. He ordered executions on a whim, sometimes simply because he found the idea amusing. Friends, allies, even family members were not safe. He had his sister Drusilla, whom he was rumored to have had an unnatural affection for, declared a goddess. After her death, those who displeased him were tortured, banished, or worse, used as entertainment in the bloody arenas of Rome. Perhaps the most bizarre of his obsessions was his fascination with the sea. Believing himself to be a divine conqueror, he ordered his legions to declare war on Neptune, the god of the sea. Soldiers were commanded to march to the shores of the English Channel and collect seashells as spoils of war. Rome watched in stunned disbelief as its once promising emperor turned warfare into absurdity. But power built on terror is never secure. As Caligula's madness grew, so did his enemies. The Praetorian Guard, the very soldiers SW to protect him, had seen enough. In 41 CE, after less than 4 years on the throne, a conspiracy was hatched. On January 24th, as Caligula walked through a palace corridor, a group of guards surrounded him with swords drawn. They struck the emperor. Once worried as a god, fell to the ground, bleeding, pleading, and gasping for air. He was stabbed over 30 times before his body was left in the dirt. His wife and young daughter were also executed, ensuring that no heir could rise in his name thus ended the reign of Caligula, the emperor who had risen to glory only to be consumed by madness. His name would be etched in history not as a hero, but as a warning of what happens when absolute power falls into the hands of the unhinged. Even after his death, Rome struggled to understand what had happened. Was he truly mad, or was he playing a role testing the limits of what a ruler could do? Some believed he was suffering from an undiagnosed illness, perhaps epilepsy or even a neurological disorder caused by his early illness. Others saw him as a symbol of unchecked power, proof that even the mightiest empire could be brought to its knees by the whims of a single man. Though his reign was short, the legend of Caligula endured. His name became synonymous with excess, cruelty, and insanity. Writers, playwrights, and historians would retell his story for centuries, a dark fable of how power can twist even the brightest minds into monsters. Tonight, as you close your eyes, remember the tale of Caligula not just as a story of madness, but as a reminder that history is shaped by those who wield power for better or for worse. His reign may have ended in blood, but his name echoes through time, a whisper from the past, warning of what happens when an empire places its fate in the hands of the unhinged. So sleep well, dear dreamer, and know that even the most powerful rulers, if left unchecked, can become nothing more than shadows in the annals of history. Pope John XII, the sinner on the papal throne. In the year 937 CE, a boy named Octavianus was born into one of Rome's most powerful families. His father, Ulrich II of Spalato, was a dominant force in the crumbling remnants of the once mighty Holy Roman Empire. But young Octavianus was no warrior, no scholar, no SLY figure destined for greatness. Instead, history would remember him as Pope John XII, the most infamous pope to ever sit on the throne of St. Peter, a ruler who would turn the sacred halls of the Vatican into his personal den of vice and debauchery. Octavianus was born into privilege but not piety. His father ruled Rome with an iron grip, and as he approached death, he ensured that his son would inherit more than just wealth and power. He would inherit the very throne of the papacy. At the age of just 18, Octavianus was elected Pope John XII, a decision that had little to do with his spiritual qualifications and everything to do with his family's political influence. A teenager now held the highest religious office in Christendom, but instead of humility and devotion, the Vatican found itself ruled by a reckless and immoral young man whose interests lay far from matters of faith. From the moment he ascended to the papacy in 955 CE, John XII transformed the lawn palace into something more akin to a royal court of sin. He surrounded himself with pleasure-seekers, gamblers, and courtisans. The holy sites of Rome became playgrounds for his indulgences. Some said that the Vatican resembled a brothel more than a house of God. He abandoned all semblance of papal decorum, replacing it with scandalous debauchery. He was rumored to have engaged in open fornication, even within the sacred halls of the latter. Vetan cardinals and bishops whispered that he had taken lovers from among both nuns and noble women. Some even claimed he defiled holy sites with ritualistic orgies, turning sacred spaces into scenes of unspeakable vice. But John XII's sins were not limited to lust alone. He was accused of simony, selling church offices to the highest bidder, and bribery, using the wealth of the church to fund his extravagant lifestyle. He spent more time hunting, feasting, and drinking than administering to his flock. He gambled away sacred treasures, using the church's wealth for personal pleasures. The corruption of the papacy reached such depths that even devout believers could no longer ignore it. Whispers turned into murmurs into outcries. The Pope of Rome, it seemed, had become the very embodiment of sin. John XII's debauchery might have been tolerable if he had at least managed the political affairs of the papacy with competence, but he did not. His recklessness extended beyond pleasure. He was also a fool when it came to securing his power. In a desperate attempt to hold on to his position, he formed an alliance with Otto, the first king of Germany, crowning him Holy Roman Emperor in 962 CE. But almost as soon as the crown was placed upon Otto's head, John XII turned against him, plotting against the very man he had elevated. He betrayed Otto, secretly aligning himself with the emperor's enemies. Otto, no fool, responded by marching on Rome in 963 CE. He deposed John XII, installing a more suitable pope in his place, but John XII was not so easily removed. The young pope fled into exile, only to return months later at the head of a rebellious force, reclaiming the Vatican through bloodshed and intimidation. His brief return to power was marked by revenge. He mutilated and executed his enemies, punishing those who had dared to stand against him, but his reign of terror would not last long. The story of Pope John XII ends in fitting irony. In May 964 CE, at the age of 27, he died suddenly under circumstances as scandalous as his life. Some say he was struck down by divine wrath, others that he suffered a fatal stroke in the midst of committing adultery. One of the most widely circulated rumors claims that he was killed by the angry husband of one of his many lovers, caught in the very act of betrayal. Whatever the truth, his death came not in solemn prayer, not in a moment of repentance, but in the shadow of sin. Just as he had lived, even in death, John XII left behind a legacy of disgrace. His reign had brought the papacy to one of its lowest points, a time when the leader of the Christian world was little more than a drunken, lustful tyrant. Historians and theologians alike struggled to comprehend how the Church had allowed such a man to run to power. His papacy became a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when power is given to the undeserving. The Vatican, tarnished by his corruption, spent years trying to erase the memory of his rule, but history would not forget. John XII became the symbol of the worst excesses of the papacy, a grim reminder that even the most sacred institutions are not immune to human vice. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, let the story of John XII serve as a reminder of history's darker chapters. He was not a holy man, not a leader of virtue, but a sinner who turned the holiest seat in Christendom into a palace of indulgence. His name lingers in the annals of history, whispered not as a saint but as a warning. So sleep well, dear dreamer, and remember that power, even in the hands of those meant to guide, can be corrupted beyond redemption. King John, the tyrant of England, in the year 1166, in the grand halls of the Plantagenet dynasty, a child was born who would become one of the most infamous rulers in English history. His name was John, the youngest son of King Henry II and Elena of Aquitaine. Unlike his older brothers, great warriors and noblemen, John would not be remembered for valor or wisdom. Instead, history would know him as King John, the monarch who lost nearly everything: his land, his allies, his people's trust, and even his own reputation. John's early life was marked by neglect and low expectations. His father, King Henry II, had little regard for him, calling him John Lackland, because unlike his brothers, he was not given territories to rule. His older brothers, Henry, the young king, Richard the Lionheart, and Geoffrey, overshadowed him in every way, leaving JN with little to call his own. But John was not without ambition. Though he lacked the military skill of Richard or the charisma of Henry, he was cunning, manipulative, and willing to do whatever it took to secure power. When his father died in 1189, the throne passed to Richard, the legendary warrior king, who would become known as Richard the Lionheart. But as Richard embarked on his great crusades, John began scheming. While Richard was away, John made his move. He conspired with Philip II of France to seize the throne, plotting against his own brother. But when Richard returned from captivity, John's treachery was exposed. Instead of punishing him severely, Richard showed mercy, perhaps a mistake that England would later regret. When Richard died in 1199, John finally ascended to the throne, but unlike his brother, Jan lacked the qualities of a great king. He was cruel where Richard was fair, cowardly where Richard was brave, and incompetent where Richard was strategic. His reign was plagued by failure after failure, setting the stage for disaster. One of John's greatest failures was his disastrous conflict with Philip II of France. John inherited a vast empire stretching from England to Normandy, Aquitaine, and Anjou, but he lacked the military prowess to defend it. Within a few years, he had lost Normandy, a crushing humiliation that earned him the scorn of his nobles and people alike. His response: more taxes. Desperate to fund his failing wars, John heavily taxed the nobility and commoners alike, pushing England to the brink of revolt. His need for money led him to extort the clergy, steal from barons, and imprison those who opposed him. His rule was one of greed and oppression, earning him enemies at every turn. John's thirst for power was so great that it even extended to his own family. In 1203, his young nephew Arthur of Brittany, the rightful heir to much of John's French territory, was captured. Arthur had a strong claim to the throne, and many nobles' support led him over John. Fearing a challenge to his rule, John ordered Arthur's execution, a crime that horrified even his staunchest supporters. Rumors spread that John had personally murdered Arthur in a drunken rage, throwing his body into the river Seine. Whether he committed the act himself or not, Arthur was never seen again, and John's reputation was permanently stained with the murder of an innocent prince. As John's failures mounted, so did opposition to his rule. His cruel taxation, military disasters, and open corruption pushed the English barons to their breaking point. In 1215 they rose in rebellion, forcing John to the negotiating table at Runny. Jan was compelled to sign the Magna Carta, one of the most important documents in history. This charter limited the power of the monarchy and enshrined the idea that kings were not above the law. Though Jan signed it reluctantly, he had no intention of honoring it. Almost immediately, he sought to break his promises, plunging England into civil war. John's response was as disastrous as ever. He burned tea towns, destroyed castles, and turned England into a battlefield. He even sought help from foreign mercenaries, hiring Flemish and French soldiers to fight against his own people, but it was too late. His kingdom was crumbling around him. By 1216 John's rule was collapsing. The French had invaded, the barons had turned against him, and England teetered on the edge of ruin. As he fled across the country, a stroke of misfortune sealed his fate. He crossed the Wash, a treacherous marshland, during a storm. As he did, his entire royal treasure, including his crown jewels, was lost to the sea, swallowed by the mud and tide. Broken, sick, and humiliated, John retreated to Newark Castle. There, in October 1216, he succumbed to Dentry, dying in agony, abandoned by his allies and hated by his people. Few mourned the death of King John. His own nobles had turned against him, his people despised him, and his reign had been one of failure, cruelty, and betrayal. But in a strange twist of fate, the very document he had signed in desperation, the Magna Carta, would outlive him and change the world. Though John himself was reviled, the Magna Carta laid the foundation for constitutional government, inspiring future generations and shaping the legal systems of England, America, and beyond. The tyrant who tried to defy the law instead became the unwilling architect of a world where rulers were held accountable. Tonight, as you close your eyes, remember the story of King John, a ruler whose greed, cruelty, and incompetence nearly destroyed his own kingdom. He was a man who murdered his own nephew, lost an empire, betrayed his people, and died despised by all. But his failure in the end led to something greater, the birth of a system where kings could no longer rule unchecked. So sleep well, dear dreamer, and know that even the worst rulers can leave behind lessons that shape the future. Ivan the Terrible, the Tsar who ruled with fear in the harsh Russian winter of 1530. Beneath the gilded domes of Moscow, a child was born who would become one of history's most infamous rulers. His name was Ivan Vasilyevich, but the world would come to know him as Ivan the Terrible, the man who shaped Russia through blood, war, and terror. Ivan's early life was steeped in tragedy. At just 3 years old, he became Grand Prince of Moscow after the sudden death of his father Vasil III, but a boy could not rule an empire alone. His mother Elena Glenia acted as regent, but her reign was short-lived. She was poisoned when Ivan was just 8 years old, leaving him at the mercy of power-hungry nobles. The boy prince grew up in an atmosphere of cruelty and intrigue that bore. The noble families of Russia wrestled for control, treating Ivan as a puppet. He was often humiliated, starved, and neglected, forced to witness the violence and betrayals of the court. These years of torment shaped his soul, filling him with deep paranoia and a burning hatred for the boyars. But Ivan was no ordinary child. He spent youth devouring books, particularly religious texts and histories of Rome and Byzantium. He saw himself as a divine ruler chosen by God to transform Russia into a mighty empire. In 1547, at the age of 16, Ivan took full control of Russia, declaring himself Tsar of all Russia, a title no ruler had claimed before. This was not mere vanity. By calling himself Tsar, he placed himself above the boyars, ruling not by their will but by divine right. His early reign was promising. Ivan introduced legal reforms, strengthened the military, and created a standing army known as the Stray. He also modernized Russia's administration, reducing the power of corrupt noble families and centralizing control. He expanded Russia's borders, conquering the Tatarkates of Kazan and Astrian, securing vast new territories and access to the Caspian Sea. But beneath this mask of progress, Ivan's demons fest. His paranoia deepened, his cruelty grew, and his reign turned darker with each passing year. In 1560, tragedy struck. Anastasia Romanova, Ivan's beloved wife and stabilizing force, died suddenly, likely poisoned by the boyars. Devastated, Ivan fell into a spiral of grief and madness he became convinced that his nobles were conspiring against him and his trust in anyone. Shattered with fire in his heart and vengeance in his mind, Ivan unleashed his wrath in 1565. He created the Oprichnina estate within a state ruled by his personal army, the dreaded Oprichniki dressed in black riding black horses, and bearing the insignia of a dog's head, and a broom symbols of sniffing out traitors and sweeping away enemies. These men became the instruments of Ivan's terror. What followed was a reign of brutality and bloodshed. The Boer families were purged, their lands confiscated. Their wealth seized, thousands were arrested, tortured, and executed on Ivan's orders. Some were impaled, others were torn apart by wild dog. Cities that resisted him were razed to the ground. The first of these horrors came in 1570, when Ivan turned on the once loyal city of Novgorod, believing it to be harboring traitors. His army descended upon the city, slaughtering tens of thousands of men, women, and children. The streets ran red with blood and bodies filled the Volkhov River. Russia had never seen such terror. As the years passed, Ivan's paranoia only music worsened. He saw enemies everywhere, even among his own family. In 1581, during a fit of blind rage, Ivan struck his own son and heir, Ivan Ivanovich, with his iron-tipped staff. The blow was fatal. The Tsar cradled his dying son in his arms, realizing too late the depth of his madness. He had murdered the one person who could have continued his legacy. The tragedy shattered him, with no capable heir left. Ivan's death would plunge Russia into chaos. On March 18, 1584, Ivan the Terrible died. Some say it was a stroke, others whisper of poison. His final moments were spent playing chess, a game of strategy and deception. Just as his life had been, Russia, left in disarray, entered a period of political instability, known as the Time of Troubles. Without Ivan's iron grip, rival factions fought for control and foreign invaders seized the opportunity to strike. It would take decades for Russia to recover from the scars of his rule. Was Ivan truly terrible, or was he simply a man molded by cruelty ruling in a time of brutality? He expanded Russia, forged an empire, and strengthened its military, yet he also tortured, murdered, and terrorized his own people. He saw himself as a divine warrior, yet he brought suffering and chaos. His rule is a paradox, a mixture of triumph and horror, of ambition and madness. He laid the foundations for the Russia that would rise under the Romanovs, but at a cost of immeasurable bloodshed. Tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine the snow-covered streets of Moscow, the cold wind carrying whispers of the past. Imagine the black-cloaked Oprichniki galloping through the darkness, their torches flickering like phantom lights. Ivan the Terrible ruled with fear, and though he has long since turned to dust, his shadow still lingers in history. So sleep well, dear dreamer, and remember that power, when wielded by those consumed by fear and vengeance, can shape empires, but at a terrible cost. King Richard II, the fall of a golden king. On a cool spring day in 1367, in the towering halls of Bordeaux, a prince was born who would one day wear the English crown. His name was Richard of Bordeaux, son of the valiant Black Prince and grandson of the mighty King Edward III. He was born into an England of chivalry, war, and grandeur, but his reign would become one of betrayal, tyranny, and downfall. King Richard II would not be remembered as a warrior king like his father, nor a builder of empire like his grandfather. Instead, history would remember him as the king who lost his throne. Tragedy struck Richard early. His father, the famed Black Prince, died when Richard was just 10 years old. The boy, who was never meant to be king, suddenly found himself heir to one of the most powerful thrones in Europe. When Edward III died in 1377, the 10-year-old Richard was crowned King of England. Too young to rule in his own right, his kingdom was governed by powerful noblemen, his uncles, particularly John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster. But as Richard grew older, his desire to break free from their control grew stronger. He was determined to rule England his own way, free from the influence of the nobles who had overshadowed his childhood. In 1381, just 4 years into his reign, England erupted in rebellion. The peasants' revolt, fueled by anger over high taxes, feudal oppression, and economic hardship, saw tens of thousands rise against the crown. The rebels, led by Wat Tyler, stormed London, burning buildings and executing officials. The city was in chaos, and England stood on the brink of collapse, with his kingdom crumbling. The young king did something extraordinary. He rode directly into the rebel camp, facing the furious peasants himself. With a calm voice and a fearless gaze, he promised reforms and persuaded them to disperse, though his promises were soon broken and brutal retribution followed this moment. showed that Richard was more than a mere puppet king. He had courage, but his rule would not be defined by heroism, it would be defined by vengeance and paranoia. As Richard grew older, his belief in his divine right to rule became unshakable. He despised the old war-hardened noblemen who had advised him in his youth. Instead, he surrounded himself with a circle of favorites men. He trusted above all others Robert D. Michael Diol, and others he showered them with titles, wealth, and influence, alienating the powerful barons of England. This favoritism bred resentment. The nobles, furious at being cast aside, formed an alliance against Richard. In 1387, the Lords Appellant, led by the Duke of Gloucester, seized control of the government and executed many of Richard's favorites. Humiliated and powerless, Richard was forced to submit to their authority, a bitter experience he would never forget. But Richard was not a king to forgive. In 1397, a decade after his humiliation, Richard struck back with a vengeance. He arrested the Lords Appellant, exiling some and executing others. He ruled with absolute power, crushing his enemies and eliminating opposition. Parliament became a tool of his will, and he declared himself above the law. He taxed England heavily to fund his lavish court and grandiose projects, including a magnificent palace at Sheen. He was not a warrior like his predecessors. He preferred art, pageantry, and poetry. He saw himself as a divine ruler ordained by God, untouchable by mortal men. But absolute power breeds enemies. Richard's arrogance, cruelty, and unchecked ambition turned his own kingdom against him. The lords who once feared him now plotted his downfall. Richard's greatest mistake was his treatment of Henry Bolingbroke, the son of John of Gaunt. In 1398, he banished Henry for 10 years over a petty dispute, but when John of Gaunt died in 1399, Richard seized his vast lands instead of allowing Henry to inherit them. It was a fatal miscalculation. Henry, furious and exiled, returned to England with an army. What began as a mission to reclaim his inheritance became a full-scale rebellion. The barons and people, weary of Richard's tyranny, flocked to Henry's side. Richard, believing himself untouchable, had gone on campaign in Ireland. By the time he returned, it was too late. His kingdom had turned against him. In August 1399, Richard was captured. He was imprisoned in the Tower of London, humiliated and alone. In September, he was forced to abdicate, signing away his crown to Henry Bolingbroke, who became King Henry I. 4th. Richard was moved to Ponner Castle, a cold, lonely prison. His final months remain shrouded in mystery. Some say he starved to death, others that he was murdered on Henry's orders. In February 1400, the deposed king was dead. His body was quietly buried. His reign, nothing more than a warning, a tale of a king who ruled by vanity, favoritism, and vengeance, only to be undone by his own arrogance. Though his reign ended in disgrace, Richard's story did not veer from history. Shakespeare immortalized him in his play Richard II, portraying him as a tragic king, a man who lost everything because he believed he was untouchable. His fall marked the end of the Plantagenet dynasty's unshakable rule, and set England on a path toward the Wars of the Roses. As noble houses fought for control of the throne. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine the halls of Westminster, the golden throne standing empty, the echoes of a king who once believed he was invincible. Richard II was a ruler who sought beauty over battle, poetry over politics, and power without limits. But in the end, even a king must answer to his people. So sleep well, dear dreamer, and remember that those who rule without wisdom may find themselves waking in a prison, their crown forever lost. Mary, Queen of Scots, the doomed queen of two thrones. On a cold December night in 1542, in the grand halls of Linlithgow Palace, a baby girl was born who would one day wear two crowns. Her name was Mary Stuart, and from the moment she took her first breath, her life was marked by power, ambition, and tragedy. History would remember her as Mary, Queen of Scots, the queen who lost everything, not in battle, but in a game of thrones played with ink, betrayal, and steel. Fate struck swiftly. Just 6 days after Mary's birth, her father, King James I of Scotland, died from illness, leaving his infant daughter as the Queen of Scotland. She was too young to understand, her crown too small to defend it. Scotland, a land of feuding clans and constant warfare, was now ruled by a baby queen, and danger lurked in every shadow to protect her from the ambitions of England's King Henry VII, who sought to force a marriage between Mary and his son Edward. She was whisked away to France at the age of 5. There, in the glittering court of King Henry II, she was raised as a princess of refinement, betrothed to the Young French DOA Francis. At 16 Mary married Francis, and within a year she was Queen of France. The young couple ruled briefly, but happiness was fleeting. Francis died suddenly in 1560, leaving Mary a widow at just 18 without a place in the French court, and with her homeland calling she returned to Scotland determined to reclaim her birthright. But Scotland was no longer the land she had left as a child. It was divided between Catholics and Protestants, nobles who sought power for themselves, and the ever-looming shadow of her cousin Queen Elizabeth I of England. Mary, a Catholic queen in a Protestant kingdom, was a ruler out of place. Mary's reign was filled with conflict, but her greatest mistake was her choice in husbands. Seeking a strong consort, she married her cousin Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley, a handsome but arrogant nobleman. At first it seemed a perfect match, but Darnley soon became a drunk, a liar, and a jealous tyrant. His paranoia reached its peak in 1566, when he and a group of nobles murdered Mary's secretary David Rito in front of her. While she was pregnant, the once promising marriage crumbled into hatred, and Mary soon found herself in a dark conspiracy. In 1567 Darnley was found murdered, his body lying in the gardens of Kirkhofield after his house had been blown up. The chief suspect, Mary's new favorite, the ambitious and dangerous James Hearn, Earl of Bothwell. Within weeks Mary married Bothwell, a move that scandalized Scotland. Some believed she loved him, others claimed she was forced into the marriage, but whatever the truth, the people turned against her. The Scottish nobles rose in rebellion, forcing Mary to abdicate her throne in favor of her infant son James the first. 6 betrayed, imprisoned, and stripped of her power, Mary fled to England seeking the protection of her cousin Queen Elizabeth. But Elizabeth, ever wary of rivals, saw Mary not as a guest but as a threat. For 19 years Mary was a prisoner in England, moving from castle to castle, a queen in name only. She wrote letters, plotted escapes, and tried to rally support, but with each passing year her hope faded and Elizabeth's patience wore thin. In 1586 Mary was implicated in the Babington plot, a conspiracy to assassinate Elizabeth and place Mary on the English throne. Whether she was truly involved or merely a pawn in a larger game, it did not matter. Elizabeth signed her death warrant on February 8, 1587, in the cold old halls of Fotheringhay Castle. Mary faced her fate dressed in deep red, the color of Catholic martyrdom. She climbed the scaffold composed and regal. She forgave her executioners, prayed for Scotland and England, and laid her head upon the block. The first blow missed, the second struck her neck, but still did not sever it. The third ended the life of Mary, Queen of Scots. The executioner lifted her head for all to see, but in a final cruel twist her red locks came away in his hand. Mary had been wearing a wig. Her true hair was thin and gray from years of suffering. Though she died as a traitor in England, Mary's blood still carried power. Her son James the 6th of Scotland would in time become James the 1st of England, uniting both crowns under one monarch. The woman Elizabeth had feared in life had in death brought the very union Elizabeth had sought to control. Mary's story is one of beauty and betrayal, power and downfall. She was a queen born to rule, yet destined to fall. Her life was spent fighting for a throne she would never truly hold. Her fate sealed by the men around her, her legacy forever tied to the blood-stained pages of history. Tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine Mary in her final moments, a queen without a crown, a woman who had played the greatest game and lost her voice, still lingers in history, a whisper from the past. So sleep well, dear dreamer, and remember that power once lost can never truly be reclaimed. Emperor Rudolph II, the mad emperor of magic and melancholy, in the grand halls of Vienna on a cold winter's night in 1552, a child was born into the mighty Habsburg dynasty. His name was Rudolph, and he was destined to wear the crown of the Holy Roman Empire. But unlike his warrior ancestors and calculating statesman forebears, Rudolph II would not be remembered for his conquests nor for his wisdom in governance. Instead, history would know him as the mad emperor, the ruler who lost himself in alchemy, astrology, and the occult while his empire slipped through his fingers. Rudolph was raised in the glittering courts of Spain, where he spent much of his youth under the influence of his strict and devout uncle, King Philip II of Spain. The Spanish court was a world of rigid Catholic piety, suffocating discipline, and unyielding political order. But young Rudolph was different. He was quiet, introspective, and drawn not to war and politics, but to art, mysticism, and the unknown. From a young age, he suffered from bouts of melancholy, what we would now call depression. He was plagued by a dark mind, tormented by paranoia and indecision. While his tutors prepared him for rulership, his heart was drawn elsewhere, to the stars, to the strange and forbidden books of alchemists, and to the wonders of the natural world. In 1576, at the age of 24, Rudolf was crowned Holy Roman Emperor, ruling over vast lands stretching from Austria and Bohemia to the far reaches of the empire. But while his realm needed a strong and decisive ruler, Rudolf was anything but. Instead of focusing on politics, he turned his imperial court in Prague into a sanctuary of secrets, a haven for magicians, scientists, and alchemists. He filled his palace with art, strange machines, and rare wonders, collecting everything from ancient manuscripts to bizarre artifacts. His obsession with the occult and the supernatural became legendary. Under Rudolf's reign, Prague became the most mysterious city in Europe. He gathered the greatest thinkers and most eccentric minds of his time: Johannes Kepler, the brilliant mathematician and astronomer; Tycho Brahe, the visionary Danish stargazer; Edward Kelly, the alchemist and supposed communicator with angels; and John Dee, the enigmatic scholar, who claimed to hold the key to the supernatural. While the rest of Europe waged wars and built empires, Rudolf's court became a laboratory of dreams and nightmares, where alchemists sought the philosopher's stone, astrologers read the fate of kings, and inventors constructed strange contraptions in pursuit of eternal wisdom. But while Rudolf locked himself away in his towers of wonder, his empire began to decay. He neglected diplomacy, let his nobles run unchecked, and ignored the growing tensions between Catholics and Protestants that would soon erupt into the 30 Years' War. His mental state worsened. He became deeply paranoid, believing himself to be surrounded by traitors and spies. He refused to marry, producing no heir, further destabilizing the future of the Habsburg dynasty. His behavior became erratic. He withdrew from public life, suffered from long periods of seclusion, and engaged in bizarre rituals, convinced that he was on the verge of unlocking the secrets of the universe. By 1605, his enemies had had enough. His younger brother Matthias, backed by the powerful Habsburg nobles, turned against him. Rudolf, once the most powerful man in Christendom, found himself a prisoner in his own castle, stripped of his lands and authority. In 1611, he was forced to abdicate, and Matthias seized the throne. The once glorious court of Prague, with all its sorcerers, scientists, and visionaries, was dismantled. The emperor, abandoned and broken, spent his final months wandering his vast collection of art and relics, speaking to ghosts of a past that no longer existed. On January 20th, 1612, Rudolf too died alone in his castle. No grand ceremonies were held for him. His empire moved on without him, leaving behind the shattered remains of his dreams of alchemy, immortality, and lost knowledge. Though his reign was a failure, Rudolf left behind something strange and invaluable. He had preserved knowledge, nurtured thinkers, and gathered some of the greatest minds of his age. Without his patronage, Kepler might never have revolutionized astronomy. Br's observations might have been lost, and the Renaissance's spirit of curiosity might have faded too soon. Even in his madness, he was a man who dared to dream, to search for meaning in the stars, to unlock the secrets of life itself. Though his empire crumbled, his legacy lived on in science and art, and in the eternal quest for knowledge. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine the halls of Prague Castle, where flickering candlelight dances across strange machines and unread tomes. Imagine the emperor lost in his world of symbols and secrets, chasing the impossible while his kingdom fell apart around him. So sleep well, dear dreamer, and remember that sometimes the greatest minds are also the most troubled, and those who seek the secrets of the universe may find themselves consumed by them. Queen Ranavalona the First, the ruthless queen of Madagascar. On a distant island in the warm water of the Indian Ocean, a girl was born who would one day rule her kingdom with an iron fist. Her name was Ranavalona, and she would go down in history as one of the most feared and controversial rulers of Madagascar. To some, she was a defender of sovereignty, protecting her people from the creeping influence of European powers. To others, she was a tyrant whose brutal reign bathed her kingdom in blood. But whether seen as a hero or a villain, one thing was certain: Ranavalona was a queen unlike any other. Ranavalona was not born into royalty. She was a commoner, the daughter of a man who had helped uncover a plot against the ruling king Andriana Pamarina, the great unifier of Madagascar. In gratitude, the king adopted Ranavalona into the royal household and arranged for her to marry his son Radama, the future king of Madagascar. Red became King Radama the Firman in 1810, and under his rule Madagascar opened its doors to European influences Christian missionaries. Arrived schools were built and new trade agreements flourished, but not everyone in the kingdom welcomed these changes. Among the denters was Rama's own wife Ranavalona, who saw the foreigners not as allies but as invaders. When Radama died in 1828, a power struggle erupted. By tradition, the throne should have passed to one of Rama's nephews, but Ranavalona had other plans. With the support of powerful military leaders, she seized the throne before her rivals could react. Those who opposed her were swiftly executed. The commoner's daughter had become Queen Ranavalona the First. Ranavalona wasted no time in reversing her late husband's policies. She expelled Christian missionaries, outlawed European customs, and in the teaching of foreign languages she saw Christianity as a tool of colonialism, a threat to her power and to the traditions of Madagascar. Her rule became infamously brutal. Any suspected traitors, Christian converts, or political enemies were subjected to the cruel Tangina ordeal, a deadly trial by poison. Those who survived were declared innocent. Those who perished were deemed guilty. Justice in the Queen's eyes was as simple as that. Entire communities were massacred for defying her rule. Tens of thousands were killed in purges, while countless others died from forced labor building fortresses and roads at the Queen's command. Ranavalona's reign became a time of fear, where loyalty was bought with blood and suspicion could mean death. Despite her cruelty, Ranavalona was a master strategist. She successfully kept European powers at bay at a time when much of Africa was falling under colonial rule. The French and the British attempted to overthrow her, but she outmaneuvered them time and again. In 1845, the French and British navies launched an attack on Madagascar, determined to end her rule, but Ranavalona was prepared. Using her formidable army and knowledge of the terrain, she defeated the invasion force, securing her place on the throne. Madagascar remained independent, untouched by colonial hands. For more than 3 decades, Ranavalona ruled with absolute power, but by the 1860s her health began to decline. She had outlived her rivals, her enemies, and even many of her own advisors. In 1861, after 33 years of rule, she died in her sleep, an unusual and peaceful end for a queen whose reign had been anything but. Her death was met with both relief and sorrow. Some mourned her as a patriot, a queen who had preserved Madagascar's sovereignty against all odds. Others celebrated her passing, seeing it as the end of a reign of terror. Ranavalona's son Radama too quickly undid many of her policies, reopening Madagascar to the outside world, but his rule was short-lived and Madagascar's future remained turbulent. European powers would eventually gain control of the island, but Ranavalona had held them off for longer than anyone had thought possible. To this day, Ranavalona remains one of history's most complex and controversial figures. Was she a tyrant driven by paranoia and cruelty, or was she a visionary who saw the creeping tide of imperialism and did whatever it took to resist it? Tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine the stone walls of the Rover of Antananarivo, where a queen once ruled with an iron hand. Imagine the flickering torches of her palace, where loyalty and betrayal were separated by the thinnest thread. So sleep well, dear dreamer, and remember, power is a double-edged sword, and history is never as simple as it seems. King Leopold II, the Butcher of the Congo. On a crisp April morning in 1835, in the grand palaces of Brussels, a PR was born who would one day become one of the most infamous rulers in history. His name was Leopold, and though he would wear the crown of Belgium, his true ambition lay far beyond its borders. By the time his reign ended, millions would be dead, an empire built on cruelty would crumble, and the name Leopold II would be forever stained in blood. Leopold grew up in a Belgium that was small but prosperous. The country had only gained independence in 1830, and its monarchy was still young, but Leopold was not content with ruling a modest European nation. He looked beyond Belgium to Africa, where the great powers of Europe were carving up entire continents for themselves. Britain had India, France had Algeria, and the Netherlands ruled Indonesia. Leopold wanted an empire of his own. When he ascended to the throne in 1865, he knew that Belgium alone could not afford a vast empire, but Leopold was not just ambitious, he was cunning. If Belgium could not claim a colony, he would claim one himself. Leopold set his sights on Central Africa, and rich in ivory and rubber. In 1876, he established the International African Association, presenting it as a charitable organization dedicated to bringing civilization to Africa. He promised European leaders that his goal was to end slavery and improve the lives of Africans. It was all a lie through deception, bribes, and manipulation. Leopold took control of the Congo in 1885, declaring it his personal property. Under the name the Congo Free State, it was not a colony of Belgium, it was Leopold's private empire, a territory 76 times the size of Belgium, where he ruled not as a king, but as an absolute master. Leopold's Congo was not a land of civilization, it was a land of brutality, slavery, and greed. The vast forests of the Congo were home to one of the world's most valuable resources, rubber. As the demand for rubber skyrocketed due to the Industrial Revolution, Leopold saw an opportunity for unimaginable wealth, but instead of paying workers, he turned the Congolese people into slaves. Entire villages were forced to gather rubber under brutal conditions. Those who refused or failed to meet their quotas were subjected to torture, mutilation, or execution. The most infamous punishment was the severing of hands. Soldiers, known as the force publique, were ordered to collect the severed hands of workers as proof that they had not wasted bullets. Piles of hands became the grim currency of Leopold's reign. Women were kidnapped, children were enslaved, and entire communities were massacred if they resisted. It is estimated that at least 10 million Congolese people died under Leopold's rule, more than half the population of the region. For years, the horrors of the Congo were hidden behind Leopold's carefully crafted propaganda. He continued to present himself as a benevolent ruler, a patron of civilization. He built grand monuments in Belgium, funded lavish public projects, and was adored by his European subjects who had no idea what their king was doing in Africa. But eventually the truth could not be buried. Brave journalists and missionaries, most notably Edmond Dean Morel and Roger Cement, exposed the atrocities to the world. Photographs of Congolese men, women, and children missing hands and limbs spread across Europe. The public turned against Leopold, demanding action. Under immense international pressure, Leopold was forced to surrender the Congo to Belgium in 1908. But even as the Congo became a Belgian colony, the damage had been done. The scars of Leopold's rule would never fully heal. Leopold never showed remorse for what he had done. He had personally amassed unimaginable wealth, and as he lay dying in 1909, he was surrounded by luxury. He ordered that all records of his rule in the Congo be burned, attempting to erase his crimes from history. But the world did not forget. Today, Leopold II is remembered not as a great king, but as a butcher, a man who turned a nation into a labor camp and ruled with unspeakable cruelty. Though Belgium would go on to rule the Congo for decades, the terror of Leopold's reign left a wound that never fully healed. Tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine the silent forests of the Congo, where a terrible history still lingers. Imagine the echo of those who suffered, whose voices were once silenced but never forgotten. Leopold II thought he could erase the truth, but history remembers. So sleep well, dear dreamer, and know that power, when driven by greed and cruelty, leaves behind not greatness but shadows that never fade. History, much like the night sky, is a tapestry of both darkness and light. We've wandered through the shadows cast by the world's worst rulers, men who ruled with cruelty, greed, and folly. But fear not, dear dreamer, for even the longest night must give way to dawn. Now let us drift toward a different kind of story, one where wisdom, courage, and justice shape the world. Rest easy as we journey into the lives of the greatest rulers, leaders who lit the way, left legacies of hope, and proved that power, when wielded wisely, can change the world for the better. Alexander the Great, the conqueror of the world. Tonight, let us journey through the life and legacy of Alexander the Great, the ruler who dared to dream beyond horizons and conquer the known world. His story is one of ambition, courage, and brilliance, a tale of an extraordinary man whose vision shaped the course of history. Close your eyes and step into a world where empires rise and fall, where legends are born, and where the echo of greatness still resonates through time. Alexander was born in 356 BC in Pella, the ancient capital of Macedonia. His father, King Philip II, was a brilliant military leader who united the Greek city-states under Macedonian rule. His mother, Queen Olympus, was a powerful and passionate woman who believed Alexander was destined for greatness. She told him that his lineage traced back to Achilles, the legendary hero of the Trojan War. From an early age, Alexander displayed remarkable intelligence, courage, and ambition. At the age of 13, he was tutored by Aristotle, one of the greatest philosophers of all time. Under Aristotle's guidance, Alexander developed a love for philosophy, science, and literature, yet his heart burned with a desire for glory and conquest. At just 16 years old, Alexander commanded his first military campaign, crushing a rebellion, and founding his first city, Alexander. His father proudly declared, "My boy, you must find a kingdom large enough for your ambitions. Macedonia is too small for you," and indeed Alexander's ambitions would reach far beyond Macedonia's borders. In 336 BC, King Philip II was assassinated and 20-year-old Alexander ascended to the throne to secure his rule. He swiftly eliminated all rivals, demonstrating both cunning and resolve with Greece. Under his control, Alexander turned his gaze eastward, toward the mighty Persian Empire. Before setting out, he visited the Oracle of Delhi seeking guidance. According to legend, the priestess declared, "My son, you are invincible, armed with divine prophecy and unmatched confidence." Alexander set forth on his epic journey of conquest. Alexander's campaign against Persia was nothing short of extraordinary. In 334 BC, he crossed the Hellespont into Asia Minor with a powerful army of Macedonians and Greeks. At the Battle of Granicus, his forces achieved a decisive victory, opening the gateway to Asia. His most famous battle came in 331 BC at Gamella, where he faced the Persian king Darius III. Vastly outnumbered, Alexander employed brilliant tactics and led a daring cavalry charge that shattered the Persian lines. Darius fled and Alexander was crowned king of Asia. After the battle, he entered Babylon in triumph, celebrated as a liberator. He continued to conquer the great Persian cities of Susa and Peis, amassing immense wealth. At Persepolis, he famously burned the royal palace, symbolizing the end of Persian dominance. In 332 BC, Alexander marched into Egypt, where he was welcomed as a liberator from Persian rule. At the ancient city of Memphis, he was crowned pharaoh, the divine ruler of Egypt. To honor his godlike status, he visited the Oracle of Susa in the Libyan desert. According to legend, the oracle proclaimed him the son of Zeus Ammon, the chief god. This divine endorsement further solidified his authority. Inspired by his vision of a united empire, Alexander founded the city of Alexandria on the Mediterranean coast, a city destined to become a center of knowledge and culture. Alexander continued his campaign eastward, crossing the mighty Hindu Kush into India. In 326 BC, at the Battle of the Hyas River, he faced King Porus and his formidable war elephants. It was one of his hardest-fought battles, but he emerged victorious. Impressed by Porus' bravery, he made Porus an ally, showing his respect for worthy adversaries. Yet at the edge of the world, his men grew weary. After years of relentless campaigning, they refused to march further. Reluctantly, Alexander agreed to return home, leading his army through the harsh deserts of Gidrosia, where many perished from thirst and exhaustion. In 323 BC, at the age of 32, Alexander fell ill in Babylon. Some say it was a fever, others believe it was poison. On his deathbed, his generals asked him, "To whom do you leave your empire?" He replied, "To the strongest." With these words, he passed into legend. His death left a vast empire without a ruler, leading to decades of conflict known as the Wars of the Diadochi. His generals carved the empire into kingdoms, but Alexander's legacy endured. Alexander the Great changed the world more profoundly than any conqueror before him. He spread Greek culture across 3 continents, from Egypt to India, creating the Hellenistic civilization that blended Greek, Persian, Egyptian, and Indian influences. His city, Alexandria, became a beacon of learning, home to the legendary Library of Alexandria. He inspired countless leaders, from Julius Caesar to Napoleon, who sought to emulate his conquests. His legend grew with each generation, immortalized as the greatest general in history. As our journey through Alexander's world comes to an end, take one last look at the man who dared to conquer the earth. He once said, "There is nothing impossible to him who will try." His legacy is not merely in the lands he ruled, but in the dreams he inspired. Tonight, let the spirit of Alexander the Great guide your dreams, filling them with courage, ambition, and the endless pursuit of greatness. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Julius Caesar, the man who shaped Rome. Letters journey through the life and legacy of Julius Caesar, the man whose ambition, genius, and courage transformed Rome from a republic into an empire. His story is one of military triumphs, political intrigue, and a tragic end that echoes through history. Close your eyes and step into a world of power and glory, where destiny is forged by daring dreams and decisive actions. Julius Caesar was born in 100 BC into the powerful Julii family, claiming descent from Venus, the goddess of love. From a young age, he was taught that greatness was his birthright. However, his family's political influence was waning and Rome was a city in turmoil plagued by corrupt Ion and civil strife. At 16, Caesar faced his first trial of courage when his father died, leaving him as head of the family. He navigated Rome's treacherous political landscape with cunning and charm. At 18, he defied the dictator Sulla by refusing to divorce his wife Cornelia. Despite the grave danger it posed, Sulla spared his life, but warned in Caesar there are many Mariuses. The prophecy hinted at his future power. To avoid persecution, Caesar joined the military, where he displayed extraordinary bravery and strategic brilliance, earning the civic crown, Rome's highest military honor. Returning to Rome, Caesar used his wit and charisma to climb the political ladder. He became a lawyer known for his powerful oratory skills, captivating all audiences with his eloquence and passion. Soon, he was elected as a military tribune, then quaestor, and later aedile, organizing lavish games that won public admiration. His political alliances were equally strategic. He formed a powerful bond with Crus, the wealthiest man in Rome, and Pompey, a celebrated general. Together, they formed the first triumvirate, an unofficial alliance that dominated Roman politics. Yet beneath this partnership, ambition and rivalry simmered. In 58 BC, Caesar became governor of Gaul, a vast territory in modern-day France. With unmatched military genius, he led his legions to conquer the GIC tribes, expanding Rome's territory and amassing immense wealth. His campaigns were legendary, braving harsh winters, building bridges over the Rhine in record time, and even invading Britain. At the Battle of Alesia, he achieved his greatest victory by surrounding and defeating the formidable GIC conversing. Jork. Caesar's commentaries on the GIC War, his first-hand accounts, showcased his strategic brilliance and propaganda mastery. However, his growing power and popularity alarmed his political rivals, especially Pompey, who turned against him. The seeds of civil war was sown in 49 BC. The Senate, influenced by Pompey, ordered Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen, defying the decree. Caesar made a fateful decision. He crossed the Rubicon River with his legion, declaring Allah Yak Est. The die is cast. It was an act of rebellion that ignited civil war. With unmatched speed and strategy, Caesar marched on Rome, forcing Pompey and his supporters to flee. In a series of brilliant campaigns, he pursued Pompey across Greece, Egypt, and Africa. At the Battle of Philus, despite being outnumbered, Caesar defeated forces, solidifying his control over Rome. In Egypt, Caesar became entangled with the young Queen Cleopatra, whose charm and intelligence captivated him. Their alliance was both romantic and political, cementing his influence in the East. Returning to Rome, Caesar was declared dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. He initiated sweeping reform forms, including the Julian calendar, economic relief, and citizenship expansion. His vision was to create a strong centralized government, ending the corruption and chaos of the Republic. Yet his power and ambition sparked fear and jealousy among senators, who saw him as a tyrant threatening their tradition of republican rule. They conspired to end his rule. On March 15, 44 BC, the IDS of March, Caesar entered the Senate unaware of the plot against him. Surrounded by conspirators, he was stabbed 23 times. Among the assassins was Brutus, whom Caesar deeply trusted. His last words, according to legend, were "Et to Brute, and you Brutus." With that, he fell at the base of Pom's statue. His death, symbolizing the end of the Roman Republic. His assassination plunged Rome into chaos, leading to another civil war. The power vacuum paved the way for his heir Octavian, later Augustus, to rise as the first emperor of Rome, marking the birth of the Roman Empire. Julius Caesar's influence stretched far beyond his lifetime. He expanded Rome's territories, laid the foundations for imperial rule, and reformed political, social, and economic systems. His name became synonymous with power. Caesar became a title for rulers, from the Roman emperors to the Russian czars and German kaisers. His life inspired countless works of literature, art, and drama, immortalized in Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar. His military tactics continued to be studied by generals, and his political strategies shaped the evolution of leadership and governance. As our journey through Caesar's world comes to an end, take one last look at the man who dared to reshape Rome. He once said, "Veni vidi vici, I came, I saw, I conquered." His legacy endured not only in the pages of history, but in the ambitions of those who dare to dream tonight. Let the spirit of Julius Caesar guide your dreams, filling them with courage, ambition, and the drive to shape your destiny. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Ramses II, the pharaoh who defied time. Let us journey through the life and legacy of Ramses II, the mighty pharaoh who ruled Egypt with unparalleled power and splendor. Known as Ramses the Great, he was a warrior, builder, and ruler whose name became synonymous with greatness. His reign was one of prosperity, monumentality, and legend, a tale of a king who sought immortality through his deeds and monuments. Close your eyes and step into a world of golden sands, majestic temples, and a ruler who defied time itself. Ramses II was born in 1303 BC to Pharaoh Seti I and Queen Tuya during the 19th dynasty of ancient Egypt. From an early age, he was destined for greatness. As the crown prince, he accompanied his father on military campaigns, learning the art of war and leadership. His father, a great builder and warrior, inspired him to dream of an empire that would stand for eternity. At just 14 years old, Ramses was appointed as a co-regent, ruling alongside his father. He was trained in statecraft, military strategy, and diplomacy, preparing him to inherit the throne of Egypt. When Seti passed away, young Ramses ascended the throne, becoming pharaoh of Egypt, the living embodiment of the god Horus. With a vision of greatness, he set out to restore Egypt's power, glory, and influence. His reign would last for 66 years, making him one of the longest reigning pharaohs in history. Ramses II was a fearless warrior known for his courage, strategic brilliance, and military prowess. Early in his reign, he launched military campaigns to secure Egypt's borders and expand its influence. His most famous battle was the Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites in 1274 BC. It was one of the largest chariot battles in history, fought near the Aarons River. Ramses led his army into battle with unmatched bravery. Despite being ambushed, he rallied his troops, charged into the enemy ranks. Though the battle ended in a stalemate, Ramses declared it a glorious victory. To commemorate his triumph, he commissioned monumental reliefs depicting the battle on temple walls across Egypt, including the Ramam and the temples of Abu Simbel. These vivid carvings immortalized his valor and power. To ensure peace and stability, Ramses signed the Treaty of Kadesh with the Hittite king, a historic peace agreement that ended decades of conflict and established diplomatic relations between Egypt and the Hittites. Ramses II was a master builder who left a legacy of monumental architecture that endures to this day. He adorned Egypt with colossal temple statues and cities, proclaiming his divine authority and greatness. His most magnificent creation was the great temple of Abu Simbel, carved into the cliffs overlooking the Nile. 4 colossal statues of Ramses himself guard the entrance, their faces serene and godlike. The temple was aligned so that twice a year the rising sun illuminated the inner sanctuary, bathing the statues of Ramses and the gods in golden light, a symbol of his divine connection. He built the Ramam, his Mori temple, on the west bank of Thebes. It was a grand complex of halls, courtyards, and colossal statues dedicated to his glory and legacy. He expanded the Karak temple and completed his father's work at the Temple of Seti in Abydos. His architectural achievements were unmatched, designed to defy time and ensure his name would be remembered for eternity. Ramses II was not only a mighty ruler, but also a loving husband and father. He had numerous wives and consorts, but his beloved Queen Nefertari was the jewel of his heart. He dedicated the Temple of Hathor at Abu Simbel to her, inscribing, "For the one for whom the sun shines." Her beauty, wisdom, and grace were celebrated in poetry and art. He was a father to over 100 children, ensuring the continuity of his dynasty. He appointed his sons to high-ranking positions in the military and administration, securing his legacy and the stability of his empire. His devotion to his family and his people earned him the title the Great Ancestor, revered as the father of his nation. Ramses II proclaimed himself a living god, worshipped alongside Ammonius, the king of the gods. He associated himself with Horus, the falcon-headed god of kingship, and Osiris, the god of the afterlife. His image was carved into temples and statues across Egypt's symbolizing his divine authority. He was depicted wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, uniting his realm under his rule. Through religious reforms, he promoted the worship of himself and revitalized ancient temples. His divine Status strengthened his authority and legitimacy, ensuring his rule was unquestionable. Ramses II ruled for 66 years, guiding Egypt through an era of peace, prosperity, and monumental achievement. His reign marked the height of Egypt's power and cultural influence. Remembered as the Golden Age of Egypt, he died at the age of 90, his mummified body laid to rest in the Valley of the Kings. His tomb was richly decorated. Reflecting his grandeur and divine journey to the afterlife, his mummy, discovered in 1881, now rests in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, his face preserved for eternity. His legacy endures through his monumental architecture, military conquests, and influence on Egyptian culture and religion. He became a symbol of power and greatness, inspiring generations of rulers and storytellers. As our journey through Ramses' world comes to an end, take one last look at the pharaoh who defied time and built an empire of stone. He once said, "I am Ramses, ruler of rulers. Look on my works, ye mighty." And despair. His legacy is not just in the temples he built, but in the spirit of greatness that continues to inspire. Tonight, let the spirit of Ramses the Great guide your dreams, filling them with courage, ambition, and the desire to leave a mark upon the world. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Genghis Khan, the conqueror of empires, let us journey through the life and legacy of Genghis Khan, the warrior who united the tribes of the steppes and built the largest contiguous empire the world has ever known. His story is one of survival, strategy, and sheer determination, a tale of a man who rose from hardship to reshape history. Close your eyes and step into a world of vast plains, thundering hooves, and legendary conquests. Genghis Khan was born as Ugin around 1162 near the Onan River in the rugged steppes of Mongolia. His father Yesige was a tribal chief, but his power was fragile, held together by alliances and oaths. When Tamuin was only 9, his father was poisoned by a rival tribe, leaving his family vulnerable and destitute. Abandoned by his own clan, young Temujin faced starvation and danger. He learned to survive in the harsh wilderness, forging his strength and resistance. Iron captured and enslaved by a rival tribe, he escaped by sheer willpower, vowing never to be helpless again. These early hardships shaped his relentless drive for power and unity. From the very beginning, his life was a struggle for survival, and survival meant strength, loyalty, and victory. Temujin began to gather loyal followers, uniting warriors from different tribes who had suffered under the fractured rule of rival chieftain. His vision was clear: a united Mongol nation bound not by bloodlines but by loyalty and merit. To achieve this, he married Berta, who became his lifelong companion and political ally when she was kidnapped by a rival tribe. Tamuin sought help from his blood brother Jamukha. Together they launched a Dedang rescue, but the alliance with Jamukha eventually soured as ambition drove them apart. Their rivalry culminated in a fierce battle, where Tamuin emerged victorious. Jamukha was captured, and although offered mercy, he chose an honorable death, refusing to serve the man who had surpassed him. With his rival defeated, Tamuin was proclaimed Genghis Khan, universal ruler, uniting the Mongol tribes under his leadership. It was the beginning of an empire that would change the world. Genghis Khan revolutionized Mongol society. He abolished inherited aristocratic titles, promoting people based on loyalty and merit. He enforced a strict code of laws known as Yasa, emphasizing discipline, loyalty, and justice. He reorganized his army into units of 10 known as arbans, creating a highly efficient and loyal military structure. Discipline was absolute, and his warriors were masters of archery and horseback riding, known for their mobility and ferocity. He established a communication network of mounted couriers, the Yam, ensuring rapid communication across his vast empire. Trade routes were protected, fostering commerce and cultural exchange. Under his rule, merchants and scholars were valued and protected. Genghis Khan's ambition knew no boundaries. In 1206, he launched his first campaign against the Shisa kingdom of Western Sia, swiftly defeating them and securing his western border. His next target was the powerful Jin dynasty in northern China. With unmatched military tactics, he conquered their fortified cities, employing psychological warfare, espionage, and brilliant strategies. His reputation as an invincible conqueror spread like wildfire, but Genghis Khan's wrath was merciless. When the Qum Empire of Persia executed his envoys, he unleashed his fury upon them. He razed entire cities, leaving a trail of devastation, yet he spared artisans and scholars, recognizing their value to his empire. His army marched through Central Asia, reaching as far as the Caspian Sea. No force could stand against his strategic brilliance and unyielding ambition. Despite his fearsome reputation, Genghis Khan was a visionary leader. He promoted religious tolerance, allowing his subjects to practice their faiths freely. He sought to unite his empire not only through military might but also through governance and law. He abolished torture and established a fair tax system, ensuring the prosperity of his people. He understood the importance of knowledge, inviting scholars and engineers to his court, facilitating the exchange of ideas between East and West. Under his rule, the Silk Road flourished, connecting Europe and Asia, leading to a golden age of trade and cultural exchange. In 1226, Genghis Khan launched his final campaign against the rebellious Shah kingdom. Despite his age, he led his army with relentless vigor. Legend says he was injured during battle but fought on, driven by his unyielding spirit. In 1227, Genghis Khan passed away under mysterious circumstances. Some say he died from his wounds, others believe it was illness. His body was buried in a secret location, its resting place still undiscovered. Before his death, he divided his vast empire among his sons, ensuring its continuity. His descendants continued his legacy, expanding the empire to the largest land empire in history, stretching from China to Europe. Genghis Khan's impact on history is profound. He united the nomadic tribes of Mongolia, built an empire that reshaped global trade and communication, and facilitated cultural exchange across continents. Despite his ruthless conquests, he laid the foundations of modern civilization by fostering tolerance, diplomacy, and the rule of law. His military strategies are still studied by generals worldwide. His name became synonymous with power and ambition, and his bloodline spread across nations. It is said that 1 in every 200 men alive today carries his genetic legacy. As our journey through Genghis Khan's world comes to an end, take one last look at the man who united the steppes and conquered empires. He once said, "I am the punishment of God. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." His legacy is not only in the lands he conquered, but in the spirit of unity and ambition that continues to inspire tonight. Let the spirit of Genghis Khan guide your dreams, filling them with courage, vision, and the determination to overcome all obstacles. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Ashoka the Great, the Emperor, who chose peace. Let us journey through the life and legacy of Ashoka the Great, the Emperor, who transformed from a ruthless conqueror into a compassionate ruler. His story is one of power, redemption, and enlightenment. Tale of a man who chose peace over violence and whose message of tolerance still echoes through time. Close your eyes and step into a world of ancient empires, monumental pillars, and the journey of a king who became a beacon of wisdom. Ashoka was born in 304 BC into the Maurya dynasty, the grandson of Chandragupta Maurya, the founder of the vast Mauryan Empire. His father, Emperor Bindusara, ruled over much of India, but Ashoka was not his favorite son. Ignored and overlooked, young Ashoka grew up with a fierce determination to prove his worth. Trained as a warrior, he was known for his courage, intelligence, and strategic mind. However, he was also feared for his ruthless ambition. After quelling a revolt in the city of Taxila with brutal efficiency, he earned the nickname Chand Ashoka the Fierce. When his father passed away, a fierce battle for succession ensued. Ashoka emerged victorious, ascending the throne of the Mauryan Empire to secure his rule. He eliminated all potential rivals, cementing his power through fear and strength. The emperor's ambition knew no bounds, and his eyes turned to the neighboring kingdom of Kalinga. In 261 BC, Ashoka launched a massive invasion of Kinga, the only kingdom in India that resisted Mauryan rule. The war was brutal and merciless, fought with unmatched ferocity. Ashoka's army emerged victorious, but the victory came at a terrible cost. The battlefields were strewn with corpses, rivers ran red with blood. Over 100,000 soldiers and civilians perished, and 150,000 were taken as prisoners. As Ashoka stood amidst the carnage, witnessing the suffering he had caused, a profound change stirred within him. The cries of the widows and the orphan children echoed in his soul. Overcome with guilt and sorrow, he asked himself, "What have I done?" It was a moment of awakening that would transform him from a conqueror into a seeker of peace. Haunted by the horrors of war, Ashoka turned to Buddhism, seeking solace and redemption. He embraced the teachings of Gort Buddha, renouncing violence and adopting the principles of Dhamma, righteousness, passion, and non-violence, determined to rule with justice and wisdom. Aoker dedicated his life to spreading peace. He abolished the death penalty, promoted religious tolerance, and built hospitals, schools, and public wells for his people's welfare. He banned animal sacrifices and protected wildlife, advocating for compassion towards all living beings. His transformation inspired his subjects, and his reign marked a golden age of prosperity, peace, and cultural flourishing. To spread his message of peace and morality, Aoker erected monumental pillars and rock edicts across his empire. These Asokan pillars bore inscriptions in Prait written in Brahmi script detailing his policies, moral teachings, and guidance for his people. The pillars emphasized ethical governance, respect for all religions, and social harmony. They encouraged kindness, generosity, and nonviolence. Asoka urged his people to live virtuous lives, to respect parents and teachers, and to practice tolerance and understanding. The most famous of these pillars is the lion capital of Asoka at Sth, which later became the national emblem of India. The chakra wheel on the Indian flag symbolizes Ashoka's message of justice and righteousness. Ashoka sent Buddhist missionaries to distant lands, spreading the teachings of Buddha to Sri Lanka, Central Asia, Egypt, and Greece. He supported the construction of viharas, monasteries, and stupas, Buddhist shrines, including the magnificent Sanchi Stupa, which stands as a testament to his devotion to peace. Under his patronage, Buddhism flourished and spread across Asia, influencing cultures, philosophies, and civilizations. His vision of moral governance and religious tolerance inspired future leaders, philosophers, and spiritual seekers. Ashoka ruled for over 40 years, transforming the Mauryan Empire into a realm of prosperity and harmony. His legacy is not measured by the lands he conquered, but by the hearts he touched. He is remembered as Ashoka the Great, the ruler who chose peace over power, compassion over conquest. His Dharma chakra became a symbol of justice and truth, inspiring generations to seek wisdom and righteousness. After his death, the Mauryan Empire gradually declined, but his message of peace endured. His legacy transcended time and borders, influencing spiritual and political leaders worldwide. As our journey through Asoka's world comes to an end, take one last look at the man who transformed from a fierce conqueror into a beacon of compassion. He once said, "The only true conquest is the conquest of the self." His legacy is not in monuments of stone, but in the ideals of peace, justice, and love for all beings. Tonight, let the spirit of Ashoka the Great guide your dreams, filling them with compassion, wisdom, and the courage to choose peace. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Charlemagne, the father of Europe, let us journey through the life and legacy of Charlemagne, the warrior king who united Western Europe and laid the foundations of the Holy Roman Empire. His story is one of courage, vision, and leadership, a tale of a ruler who dreamed of a united Christendom and whose influence shaped the future of Europe. Close your eyes and step into a world of knights, castles, and a legendary emperor who became the father of Europe. Charlemagne, or Charles the Great, was born in 747 AD, the son of Pepin, the short king of the Franks. His lineage was one of power and prestige, descending from the mighty Mauryan dynasty, yet his childhood was shrouded in mystery and little is known about his early years. In 768 AD, upon his father's death, Charlemagne inherited the Frankish kingdom alongside his brother Karaman, but tensions between the two brothers threatened to divide the realm. Fate intervened when Karaman died unexpectedly, leaving Charlemagne as the sole ruler of the Franks. With unparalleled ambition and determination, Charlemagne set out to expand his kingdom and restore the glory of the Roman Empire. It was the beginning of a reign that would change the course of history. Charlemagne was a formidable military leader known for his bravery, strategy, and relentless pursuit of victory. He launched a series of campaigns that expanded his kingdom into a vast empire. He conquered the Lombards in Italy, securing his position as king of the Lombards and bringing the Papal States under his protection. He waged a brutal 30-year war against the Saxons, determined to convert them to Christianity. His campaigns were fierce, marked by battles, rebellions, and the famous massacre of Verdun, where thousands of Saxon prisoners were executed. Yet his efforts ultimately succeeded, and the Saxons became loyal subjects. He also defeated the Avars in Central Europe, expanding his empire to the Danube, and launched campaigns in Spain against the Moors. His conquests created a united Christian empire that stretched across Western Europe from the Pyrenees to the Danube and from the North Sea to Italy. On Christmas Day in the year 800, Charlemagne attended Mass at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. In a moment that changed history, Pope Leo III crowned him Emperor of the Romans. The ACT symbolized the revival of the Western Roman Empire, linking Charlemagne's rule to the ancient glory of Rome. The coronation established the Holy Roman Empire, cementing Charlemagne's power and authority. It also marked the alliance between the Frankish monarchy and the Catholic Church, a partnership that would shape European politics and religion for centuries. Charlemagne's vision was not just of conquest but of unity. He dreamed of a Christian empire where faith and knowledge would flourish, binding his subjects under one God and one ruler. Charlemagne was not only a warrior but also a visionary leader who valued education and culture. Determined to revive learning and literacy, he initiated the Carolingian Renaissance, a revival of art, literature, and education in his empire. He invited scholars from across Europe, including Alcuin of York, to his court at Arran, transforming it into a center of learning and intellectual exchange. He established schools in monasteries and cathedrals, emphasizing the study of Latin literature and theology. Under his patronage, manuscripts were copied and preserved, safeguarding ancient knowledge for future generations. He reformed the writing system, introducing Carolingian minuscule, a clear and legible script that became the basis for modern European writing. Charlemagne himself was a lifelong learner, studying Latin and Greek and encouraging his children to be educated. He believed that knowledge was essential for effective governance and the spread of Christianity. Charlemagne was a just and wise ruler who reformed the legal system, standardizing laws across his vast empire. He issued capitularies, written decrees that governed justice, administration, and religious observance. He protected the poor and the weak, enforced Christian morality, and promoted social welfare. He appointed local rulers called counts to administer justice, collect taxes, and maintain order. To ensure their loyalty, he sent royal envoys, known as missi dominici, to oversee local governance. His reforms strengthened his empire's unity and stability, ensuring peace and prosperity for his subjects. His vision of governance was one of order, justice, and faith. Charlemagne ruled for 46 years, transforming Western Europe into a powerful and united Christian empire. His legacy as the father of Europe endures as he laid the foundations for modern European nations, influencing politics, religion, and culture. After his death in 8814, his empire was divided among his grandsons, leading to the formation of France, Germany, and Italy. Yet his vision of a united Christendom inspired future leaders, from the Holy Roman Emperors to Napoleon Bonaparte. His influence on education, law, and governance shaped the medieval world and laid the groundwork for the Renaissance. His name became legendary, celebrated in the Song of Roland, a medieval epic that immortalized his deeds. As our journey through Shag's world comes to an end, take one last look at the man who united Europe and dreamed of a better world. He once said, "Right action is better than knowledge, but in order to do what is right, we must know what is right." His legacy is not just in the empire he built, but in the vision of unity, justice, and knowledge he inspired. Tonight, let the spirit of Charlemagne guide your dreams, filling them with courage, wisdom, and the vision to change the world. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, who ruled an empire. Let us journey through the life and legacy of Queen Elizabeth I, the monarch who defied expectations and led England into a golden age of prosperity, culture, and exploration. Her story is one of courage, intellect, and resilience, a tale of a woman who rose above political intrigue and personal danger to become one of history's most iconic rulers. Close your eyes and step into a world of grand palaces, fierce battles, and a queen whose legacy shaped the destiny of an empire. Elizabeth Tudor was born on September 7, 1533, to King Henry VII and his second wife Anne Boleyn. Her birth was met with disappointment, as her father had desperately hoped for a male heir. Her mother, Anne Boleyn, fell from favor and was executed when Elizabeth was just 2 years old, declared illegitimate. Elizabeth's future became uncertain. Despite her precarious position, Elizabeth was highly Intelligent and well-educated, she studied Latin, Greek, French, and Italian under renowned tutors, mastering philosophy, history, and rhetoric. Her sharp mind and keen political instincts began to take shape, yet her life was fraught with danger. Her father married 4 more times, and her half-sister Mary became queen after the death of their brother Edward I. Mary viewed Elizabeth as a threat and imprisoned her in the Tower of London. Accused of treason, Elizabeth faced death but survived through courage, diplomacy, and patience. In 1558, Queen Mary the passed away and Elizabeth ascended to the throne at the age of 25. Her coronation was a grand spectacle celebrated with joy and hope by her people, but her rule was immediately challenged. England was divided by religious conflict, facing financial ruin, and threatened by powerful enemies. Elizabeth navigated the treacherous waters of politics with remarkable skill. She established the Elizabethan religious settlement, unifying her kingdom by creating the Church of England, a compromise between Catholicism and Protestantism. Her decision to remain unmarried earned her the title the Virgin Queen. She famously declared, "I am married to England," choosing power and independence over political alliances. Her reign became known as the Elizabethan era, a golden age of culture, exploration, and prosperity. In 1588, England faced its greatest threat, the Spanish Armada, a powerful fleet sent by King Philip II of Spain to invade and conquer England. Outnumbered and facing imminent danger, Elizabeth rallied her navy and her people with a speech that became legendary. Dressed in armor, she addressed her troops at Tilbury, declaring, "I have the body of a weak and fey woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king." Her words inspired her forces to fight with unmatched valor. Through brilliant naval strategy and the fierce determination of her sailors, the English fleet defeated the Armada, marking one of the greatest military victories in history. The victory secured England's independence, established it as a formidable naval power, and inspired national pride. Elizabeth's reign saw an extraordinary cultural renaissance, giving birth to the Elizabethan age of literature, art, and music. She was a great patron of the arts, supporting playwrights, poets, and musicians who created masterpieces that shaped English culture. William Shakespeare emerged as the greatest playwright of the age, penning timeless works like Hamlet, Macbeth, and Romeo and Juliet. Christopher Marlowe and Edmund Spenser also flourished, enriching English literature with their poetic genius. Courtly dances, music, and elaborate pageants celebrated the grandeur of her reign. The Globe Theatre became a cultural hub, drawing audiences from all walks of life to experience the magic of drama and storytelling. Elizabeth herself was an accomplished poet and musician, renowned for her wit, eloquence, and charm. Her court became a center of intellectual and artistic brilliance. Under Elizabeth's rule, England embarked on bold voyages of exploration, laying the foundations of the British Empire. She granted charters to explorers like S. Francis Drake, who became the first Englishman to circumnavigate the globe, bringing wealth and glory to England. Sir Walter Raleigh established the first English colony in North America, naming it Virginia in honor of the Virgin Queen. Trade flourished and England's influence spread across the seas, challenging the dominance of Spain and Portugal. These voyages of discovery expanded knowledge of the world, paving the way for future empires and global trade networks. Elizabeth ruled for 45 years, guiding England through religious turmoil, foreign threats, and economic challenges. Her leadership brought stability, prosperity, and cultural brilliance, marking the Elizabethan age as one of the greatest periods in English history. She died on March 24, 1603 at Richmond Palace, passing the throne to James I. of Scotland, uniting England and Scotland under one crown. Her death marked the end of the Tudor dynasty, but her legacy endured. She was remembered as Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, who ruled with wisdom, strength, and grace. Her reign inspired poets, artists, and historians, who immortalized her in literature and legend. As our journey through Elizabeth's world comes to an end, take one last look at the Queen who defied the odds and ruled with brilliance. She once said, "I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king." Her legacy is not just in the empire she ruled, but in the spirit of courage, wisdom, and independence she inspired. Tonight, let the spirit of Queen Elizabeth guide your dreams, filling them with resilience, vision, and the courage to defy expectations. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Napoleon Bonaparte, the emperor who dreamed of glory. Tonight, let us journey through the life and legacy of Napoleon Bonaparte, the military genius who rose from obscurity to become emperor of the French. His story is one of ambition, strategy, and destiny, a tale of a man who conquered Europe and shaped the modern world. Close your eyes and step into a world of grand battles, glittering palaces, and a ruler whose dreams of empire changed history. Napoleon Bonaparte was born on August 15, 1769, on the island of Corsica shortly after it became a French territory. His family was of minor Italian nobility, but they were not wealthy. From a young age, Napoleon was determined to rise above his humble beginnings. Sent to France to study at the Royal Military School, he excelled in mathematics, history, and military strategy. At 16, he became second lieutenant in the artillery. Driven by ambition and a burning desire for glory, he was fiercely intelligent, disciplined, and possessed an indomitable will to succeed. As the French Revolution erupted, Napoleon's loyalty to the revolutionary ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity shaped his political vision, yet he saw in the chaos an opportunity for greatness. Napoleon's military career soared when he defended the revolutionary government during the siege of Toulon in 1793. His brilliant artillery tactics earned him the rank of brigadier general at just 24 years old. He continued to rise through the ranks, leading a daring expedition to Italy in 1796 with unmatched strategic genius. He defeated the Austrian forces, securing French control over northern Italy. His soldiers adored him, calling him Lady Caporal, the Little Corporal, for his courage and leadership. Returning to France as a hero, Napoleon launched the Egyptian campaign in 1798, seeking to disrupt British trade routes. Though his fleet was destroyed by Admiral Nelson at the Battle of the Nile, he made significant scientific discoveries, including the Rosetta Stone, which unlocked the secrets of Egyptian hieroglyphs. France was in turmoil, plagued by political corruption and economic crisis. Sensing an opportunity, Napoleon staged a coup on 18 November 9, 1799, overthrowing the Directory and establishing the consulate with himself as first consul. He declared, "I found the crown of France lying on the ground, and I picked it up with my sword." With his charismatic leadership and political acumen, he restored order, stability, and prosperity to France. In 1804, he crowned himself Emperor of the French in a grand ceremony at Notre Dame Cathedral, symbolizing his supremacy and independence from the Church. The age of Napoleon had begun. Napoleon embarked on a series of military campaigns known as the Napoleonic Wars, expanding his empire across Europe. He defeated Austria and Russia at the Battle of Elitz in 1805, his most brilliant victory earning him the title Master of Europe. He crushed Prussia at the Battle of Jena and occupied Berlin in 1807. He signed the Treaty of Tilsit with Tsar Alexander I of Russia, dividing Europe between them. His empire stretched from Spain to Poland, dominating the European continent. He introduced the Napoleonic Code, a legal system that abolished feudal privileges and promoted civil rights, influencing legal systems worldwide. However, his ambition led to the ill-fated Peninsula War in Spain and the disastrous Russian campaign of 1812. The harsh Russian winter and scorched earth tactics devastated his grand army, marking the beginning of his decline. After his retreat from Russia, Napoleon faced a coalition of European powers united against him at the Battle of Leipzig in 1813. He was defeated and forced to abdicate in 1814, exiled to the island of Elba. He plotted his return in 1815. He escaped Elba and marched back to Paris in the 100 days, reclaiming his throne, but his comeback was short-lived. At the Battle of Waterloo, he faced the combined forces of Britain and Prussia. Defeated by Duke of Wellington, his empire crumbled. He was exiled to St. Helena, a remote island in the South Atlantic, where he spent his fin years. Reflecting on his legacy, on May 5, 1821, Napoleon died, reportedly whispering his last words. France Army head of the Army Josephine. Napoleon's impact on history is unparalleled. He modernized France's administration, economy, and education. His Napoleonic Code became the foundation of legal systems across Europe and Latin America. His military tactics are studied by generals to this day, inspiring leaders from Wellington to Eisenhower. His vision of a united Europe influenced the creation of the European Union, yet his ambition led to devastating wars, leaving millions dead. He was both a hero and a conqueror, a visionary and a tyrant, a man whose complex legacy defies simple judgment. As our journey through Napoleon's world comes to an end, take one last look at the man who dared to dream of empire. He once said impossible is a word to be found only in the dictionary of fools. His legacy is not merely in the lands he conquered, but in the spirit of ambition and determination he inspired. Tonight, let the spirit of Napoleon and Bonaparte guide your dreams, filling them with courage, ambition, and the drive to shape your destiny. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Cyrus the Great, the King of Kings. Let us journey through the life and legacy of Cyrus the Great, the visionary ruler who founded the Persian Empire and became one of the most revered leaders in history. His story is one of conquest, justice, and wisdom, a tale of a king who built an empire not just through strength but through tolerance and diplomacy. Close your eyes and step into a world of golden palaces, vast deserts, and a ruler whose name became synonymous with greatness. Cyrus II, later known as Cyrus the Great, was born around 600 BC in the Persian heartland in what is now modern-day Iran. He was a member of the Eman dynasty, the son of King Cams the Firs and the grandson of a powerful Median ruler. Legend tells that before his birth his grandfather, King Aghaze of Media, had a terrifying dream that his grandson would one day overthrow him. To prevent this, he ordered the infant Cyrus to be killed. However, a kind-hearted herdsman secretly raised the child, and Cyrus grew up strong, intelligent, and fearless. As a young man, he proved his leadership skills, and when the time came, he rose against his grandfather, uniting the Persian and Median people under his rule. It was the beginning of an empire that would change history. Cyrus was not just a warrior but a brilliant strategist and diplomat. After uniting Persia and Media, he set his sights on expanding his dominion. His army was disciplined and innovative, employing tactical warfare and psychological strategies that gave him the edge over his enemies. His first major conquest was the Lydian kingdom in 546 BC, ruled by the wealthy King Croesus, famous for his immense riches. Despite Sis's powerful army, Cyrus outmaneuvered him, capturing his capital Sardis. Rather than executing Croesus, Cyrus spared him, showing his characteristic mercy and wisdom. Next, he turned eastward, subduing vast territories across Central Asia, ensuring the security and stability of his growing empire. But his greatest conquest was yet to come. In 539 BC, Cyrus set his sights on the mighty Babylonian Empire, ruled by King Nabonidus. The city of Babylon, one of the greatest cities of the ancient world, was believed to be impenetrable, surrounded by massive walls and the great Euphrates River. However, Cyrus was a master of strategy. He diverted the Euphrates River, lowering its water levels, so his army could enter through the riverbed. The city fell without a major battle, and instead of destruction, Cyrus declared himself not a conqueror but a liberator. His rule was unlike any before him. He freed the enslaved Jewish people, allowing them to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, an act recorded in the Bible and the Cyrus Cylinder, one of the first declarations of human rights in history. His respect for different cultures and religions set him apart as a ruler of wisdom and compassion. Cyrus's most enduring legacy is the Cyrus Cylinder, an ancient clay tablet inscribed with his proclamations. It details his policies of religious tolerance, freedom for enslaved peoples, and fair governance. Unlike other conquerors who imposed their beliefs on their subjects, Cyrus respected local customs and religions. He allowed conquered peoples to retain their traditions, ensuring loyalty and stability within his empire. This legacy of tolerance and justice earned him the admiration of future generations. The United Nations today recognizes the Cyrus Cylinder as an early symbol of human rights and governance. Cyrus continued expanding his empire until his final campaign against the might of fierce nomadic tribe in Central Asia. According to legend, their queen Tamiris challenged him in battle, seeking vengeance for the death of her son at the hands of the Persians. A brutal battle ensued, and Cuz fell in combat around 530 BC. Some accounts say he was killed on the battlefield, while others suggest he died of wounds sustained in battle. Regardless of how he met his end, his name was forever etched in history as one of the greatest rulers of all time. His body was laid to rest in a simple yet elegant tomb in Pagade, his capital city. The tomb remains a sacred site, a testament to his enduring legacy. Cyrus's empire, known as the Aeanid Empire, became the largest the world had ever seen, stretching from the Indus River to the on-sea his successors including Darius the Great and Xerxes I carried on his vision shaping the course of history. His model of governance, tolerance, respect, and fair administration inspired countless leaders from Alexander the Great to the founding fathers of the United States. His ideas of religious freedom and human rights remain relevant to this day. Even centuries later, the Persian people revere him. As the father of Persia, his rule marked the beginning of one of history's most influential empires, one that shaped art, science, politics, and philosophy for generations to come. As our journey through Cyrus's world comes to an end, take one last look at the king who ruled with justice, strength, and wisdom. He once said, "I am Cyrus, king of the world." His legacy is not just in the lands he conquered, but in the ideals of fairness, unity, and tolerance that still inspire the world today. Tonight, let the spirit of Cyrus the Great guide your dreams, filling them with courage, wisdom, and the vision to lead with justice. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. Let us journey through the life and legacy of Augustus, the man who transformed Rome from a crumbling republic into a mighty empire. His story is one of political brilliance, military strategy, and a vision that shaped the Western world. Close your eyes and step into a world of grand marble temples, fierce battles, and the dawn of the Roman Empire. Augustus was born Gaius Octavius in 63 BC into a wealthy but relative unremarkable Roman family. His fortunes changed dramatically when his great-uncle Julius Caesar adopted him as his son and named him heir to his immense political and military power. When Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC, the Roman Republic was thrown into chaos. At just 18 years old, Octavian stepped forward to claim his inheritance. Though few took him seriously at first, his cunning, patience, and determination soon made him a formidable force in Roman politics. To consolidate power, Octavian formed the Second Triumvirate with Mark Antony and Lepidus, a political alliance that would dominate Rome for years. Together, they hunted down Caesar's assassins, Brutus and Cassius, culminating in their defeat at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC. But the alliance was never meant to last. Over time, tensions grew between Octavian and Mark Antony, especially as Antony became entangled with Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt. Octavian seized the opportunity to turn Rome against Antony, portraying him as a traitor under Cleopatra's spell. In 31 BC, their rivalry led to the Battle of Actium, where Octavian's fleet, commanded by Agrippa, crushed Antony, and Cleopatra's forces, defeated the lovers, fled to Egypt, where they took their own lives with his last great rival gone. Octavian was now the undisputed master of Rome. In 27 BC, Octavian took the name Augustus, meaning the revered one. Rather than declaring himself a dictator, he cleverly maintained the illusion of the Republic. While holding supreme power, the Senate granted him nearly limitless authority, making him Rome's first emperor. Under his rule, Rome entered an era of unprecedented stability and prosperity known as the Pax Romana, a time of peace that lasted for over 200 years. Augustus reformed the military, established a professional bureaucracy, improved infrastructure, and promoted the arts and literature. He famously boasted, "I found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble." His architectural projects included the Pantheon, the Areopagus, and the Forum of Augustus, symbols of his lasting legacy. Augustus ruled for over 40 years, guiding Rome through its transformation into an empire. He carefully managed his image as the princeps' first citizen, avoiding the fate of his great-uncle Julius Caesar, who was assassinated for seeking too much power for Augustus passed away at the age of 75. His body was laid to rest in the Mellum of Augustus, and he was deified by the Senate as Divus Augustus, forever worshipped as a god. His influence endured long after his death. Every emperor that followed bore the title Caesar or Augustus, and his reforms shaped Rome for centuries. Even today, his name lives on in our calendar. The month of August is named in his honor. As our journey through Augustus's world comes to an end, take one last look at the man who turned Rome into an empire. He once said, "Festina lente, make haste." Slowly, his careful, calculated rise to power ensured the longevity of Rome, proving that true leadership is built on patience, vision, and unwavering determination. Tonight, let the spirit of Augustus guide your dreams, filling them with wisdom and Bedtime and the courage to shape your own destiny. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Louis XIV, the Sun King, who ruled with splendor. Let us journey through the life and legacy of Louis the 14th, the monarch who reigned longer than any other European king and transformed France into a grand powerful nation. His story is one of absolute power, lavish spectacle, and a vision that shaped the destiny of France. Close your eyes and step into a world of golden palaces, extravagant courts, and a ruler who called himself the Sun. King Louis XIV was born on September 5, 1638 to King Louis I XIII and of Austria. His birth was considered a miracle as his parents had struggled for years to produce an heir. Because of this he was called Diadon, God-given, at the age of 5. After the death of his father, young Louis became king of France. However, true power rested with his mother and her chief minister, Cardinal Marat, who ruled as his regent during his youth. France was embroiled in civil wars known as the Fronde, where rebellious nobles challenged royal authority. These early experiences taught Louis a crucial lesson: never to let anyone threaten the power of the monarchy. When Cardinal Marat died in 1661, Louis XIV, at the age of 22, took full control of the government. He stunned the court by declaring El Samoa, I am the state. From that moment he ruled with absolute authority, centralizing power and weakening the influence of the nobility. To secure his control, he restructured France's administration, built a strong army, and promoted economic reforms through his minister Jean-Baptiste Colbert. He enforced religious unity, revoking the Edict of Nantes, forcing Protestants to convert or flee France. Louis believed his authority came from divine right, positioning himself as the Sun King around whom all of France revolved. His court became the most magnificent in Europe, and his vision of grandeur shaped the very image of monarchy. To showcase his absolute power, Louis transformed a modest hunting lodge into the Grand Palace of Versailles, a symbol of France's prestige. It became the center of political and social life, with its magnificent hall of mirrors, sprawling gardens, and luxurious decor designed to impress and control the nobility. The court at Versailles was a spectacle of elaborate ceremonies, extravagant fashion, and intricate etiquette. Nobles vied for the king's favor, ensuring their loyalty and dependence on his good will. Versailles was not just a palace, it was a statement, an embodiment of Louis XIV's vision of absolute monarchy and France's supremacy in Europe. Louis XIV sought to expand France's borders and assert its dominance in Europe. His was marked by a series of wars, including the War of Devolution, the Franco-Dutch War, and the War of the Spanish Succession. Though France gained territories and demonstrated its military press, constant warfare drained the economy and burdened the people. The Treaty of Utrecht in 1713 curbed Louis' ambitions, ensuring that France would not unite with Spain under one crown. Despite his military setbacks, Louis established France as Europe's most powerful state, influencing diplomacy, culture, and warfare for generations. After ruling for an astonishing 72 years, Louis XIV died on September 1, 1715, leaving behind an enduring legacy. His reign ushered in France's Golden Age, a period of immense cultural and artistic achievement. He patronized artists, musicians, and playwrights such as Molière, Razin, and Lully, elevating French culture to new heights. His influence extended beyond politics. His model of absolute monarchy inspired rulers across Europe, from Peter the Great of Russia to Frederick the Great of Prussia. Yet his lavish spending, costly wars, and rulericity, the seeds of future unrest. Less than a century later, France would see the rise of revolution, challenging the very monarchy he had glorified. As our journey through Louis XIV's world comes to an end, take one last look at the king who reigned with unmatched splendor. He once said, "Has God forgotten all I have done for him?" His name became synonymous with absolute power, his palace a testament to his grandeur, and his vision an indelible mark on history. Tonight, let the spirit of Louis XIV guide your dreams, filling them with ambition, elegance, and the pursuit of greatness. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Henry VII, the king who changed England forever. Let us journey through the life and legacy of Henry VII, the formidable monarch whose reign reshaped England's history. His story is one of power, ambition, and transformation, a tale of a king who defied the Pope, founded a new church, and left a legacy of grandeur and controversy. Close your eyes and step into a world of royal courts, political intrigue, and a ruler whose 6 marriages became legendary. Henry VII was born on June 28, 1491, the second son of Henry VIII and Elizabeth of York. As a child, he was never expected to be king. His older brother Arthur was the heir to the throne, but when Arthur died unexpectedly in 1502, young Henry's fate changed Forever Henry was raised in an environment rich with learning music and physical training. He excelled in languages, theology, and philosophy, mastering multiple tongues and absorbing the ideals of Renaissance humanism. He was also a skilled athlete, excelling in jousting, hunting, and tennis. Presently himself as the epitome of a strong and capable ruler. At just 17 years old, Henry was crowned King of England in 1509, marrying his brother's widow Catherine of Aragon to secure an alliance with Spain. Handsome, athletic, and intelligent, Henry was the ideal Renaissance king. His reign began with promise, but his thirst for power and desire for a male heir would soon define his music rule for years. Henry's marriage to Catherine of Aragon produced only one surviving child, Mary, but no son to inherit the throne. Frustrated and convinced that God was punishing him for marrying his brother's widow, Henry sought an annulment from the Pope. When Pope Clement VII refused to grant the annulment due to political pressures from Catherine's powerful nephew, Holy Roman Emperor Charles I, Henry became increasingly frustrated. The Pope's refusal sparked one of the most significant religious upheavals in history. Determined to take matters into his own hands, Henry, with the help of his chief advisor Thomas Cromwell, declared himself supreme head of the Church of England in 1534, breaking from the authority of the Catholic Church. This event, known as the English Reformation, not only allowed him to marry again but also led to the dissolution of monasteries, the redistribution of their wealth, and a fundamental shift in English governance and religion. Henry's decision sent shock waves throughout Europe, creating deep divides between Catholic and Protestant nations. The break from Rome reshaped England's spiritual and political landscape, placing the monarchy at the center of religious authority. Henry VII's marriages shaped both his personal life and England's future. His 6 wives met different fates, each playing a role in his quest for an heir. Catherine of Aragon divorced. Their marriage lasted over 20 years before Henry's obsession with having a son led to its annulment. Catherine remained devoted to her faith and her daughter Mary, but was exiled from court and died in obscurity, and been executed. The ambitious and intelligent and been captivated Henry, but when she too failed to produce a son, she was accused of adultery, treason, and incest. In 1536, she was executed at the Tower of London, leaving behind her daughter Elizabeth. Jane Seymour died after childbirth. Henry's third wife, Jane Seymour, gave him his long-awaited son Edward VI, but died just days after childbirth in 1537. Henry considered her his true wife and was later buried beside her. Anne of Cleves divorced. A political marriage arranged by Cromwell. Henry found Anne of Cleves unattractive and annulled the marriage. After 6 months, she was granted a generous settlement and lived comfortably in England. Catherine Howard executed. Young and flirtatious Catherine Howard was accused of adultery and beheaded in 1542, echoing Anne Boleyn's tragic fate. Catherine Parr survived, and Henry's final wife, Catherine Parr, was a wise and capable woman who helped reconcile Henry with his daughters Mary and Elizabeth. She outlived him and later remarried. As Henry aged, his once athletic figure became bloated, his temper more unpredictable, and his paranoia, ever growing. A leg injury from a jousting accident left him in constant pain, and he suffered from obesity and ulcers, which made his final years increasingly difficult. Despite his declining health, he continued to rule with absolute authority, crushing rebellions and enforcing religious reforms. His lavish spending, fueled by wealth from the dissolved monasteries, led to economic instability. Henry died on January 28, 1547, at the age of 55. His son Edward VI succeeded him, but his reign was short-lived. After Edward's death, Mary briefly ruled before Elizabeth took the throne, ushering in England's golden age. Henry VI's reign changed England forever. His break with the Catholic Church, the dissolution of monasteries, and the establishment of the Church of England had lasting religious and political effects. His creation of a powerful navy laid the foundation for England's maritime dominance in the centuries to come. His reign left behind a mix of admiration and controversy. On one hand, he was a patron of the arts, a scholar, and a powerful leader, but on the other he was seen as a tyrant prone to cruelty and excess. Though he failed to secure a stable line of succession, his daughter Elizabeth I became one of England's greatest monarchs, proving that Henry's legacy extended far beyond his own reign. As our journey through Henry VII's world comes to an end, take one last look at the king who redefined monarchy. He once said, "I see my end is Coming yet I am satisfied, for I have done my duty. His reign was one of triumph and turmoil, leaving an indelible mark on history. Tonight let the spirit of Henry VII guide your dreams, filling them with ambition, resilience, and the echoes of a world forever changed. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Peter the Great, the Tsar who transformed Russia. Let us journey through the life and legacy of Peter the Great, the visionary ruler who dragged Russia into the modern world. His story is one of ambition, reform, and relentless determination, a tale of a man who reshaped his country, built a grand new capital, and turned Russia into a formidable empire. Close your eyes and step into a world of grand palaces, naval conquests, and the unstoppable will of AR, who refused to accept stagnation. Peter was born in 1672 to Darer Alexa III and his second wife Natalia Nishina. He was a curious and energetic child, but his early years were marked by political turmoil. When his father died, Peter's half-brother Fodor III took the throne, but his weak health led to a power struggle between two rival factions. Peter's family, the Nishin, and his half-sister Sophia, supported by the Miloslavsky faction. After Fodor's death, Sophia seized power as regent, ruling in the name of young Peter and his half-brother Ian IF, who was physically and mentally frail. However, Peter's mother and supporters bided their time, and in 1689 Peter overthrew Sophia and assumed full control at just 17 years old. He became the undisputed ruler of Russia. Unlike previous Russian rulers, Peter had a deep fascination with European advancements. Determined to modernize his country, he embarked on a grand embassy, a 2-year journey across Western Europe, visiting the Netherlands, England, and Austria. He studied shipbuilding, military tactics, and European customs, bringing back knowledge that would forever change Russia. Upon his return, Peter enacted sweeping reforms. He modernized the army, introducing European tactics and weapons. He built Russia's first navy. Recognizing the importance of naval power, he forced the nobility boors to adopt Western dress, even personally cutting their long beards to enforce his new policies. He revamped the Russian government, reducing the power of the traditional nobility and creating a merit-based system. He reformed the Orthodox Church, bringing it under state control. Peter's reforms were radical, often met with resistance, but his iron will ensured they were carried out. He was willing to crush opposition ruthlessly to push Russia forward. One of Peter's greatest ambitions was to give Russia access to the Baltic Sea, allowing for trade and expansion. This led to the Great Northern War, 1700–1721 against Sweden, then a dominant European power. Despite early defeats, Peter reorganized his forces, and in 1709 at the Battle of Pava, Russia decisively crushed the Swedish army, marking a turning point in the war. After years of conflict, the Treaty of Nystad 1721 granted Russia vast territories along the Baltic, securing its status as a major European power. To mark this achievement, Peter took the title Emperor of all Russia, transforming his realm from a medieval czard into a true empire. Determined to create a European-style capital, Peter founded St. Petersburg in 1703 on the marshy banks of the Nea River. Built by forced labor, the city was a testament to Peter's vision and resilience. He designed it to rival the great cities of Europe with grand boulevards, canals, and opulent palaces. St. Petersburg became known as Russia's window to the West, a symbol of the country's new identity. Peter made it the capital of Russia in 1712, shifting power away from the old conservative stronghold of Moscow. Peter's relentless drive for modernization often came with cruelty. He suppressed revolts with brutal force, crushed the independence of the boor, and demanded absolute loyalty. Even his own family was not spared. His son Alex, who opposed his reforms, was arrested, tortured, and died in captivity, possibly by Peter's order. Despite his harsh methods, Peter's vision for Russia was unwavering. He worked tirelessly, personally inspecting projects, learning trades, and pushing his country toward greatness. Peter died in 1725, likely due to a bladder infection after rescuing sailors from a freezing river. His death marked the end of an era, but his legacy endured. He expanded Russia's borders, making it one of the largest empires in the world. He revolutionized the military, laying the foundation for Russia's future as a global power. He transformed the government, making it more centralized and efficient. He introduced Western ideals, bringing Russia into the modern age. His beloved city, St. Petersburg, remains a testament to his vision. Though Peter ruled with an iron fist, his impact on Russia was undeniable. He turned a backward medieval kingdom into a European powerhouse, setting the stage for centuries of Russian dominance. As our journey through Peter's world comes to an end, take one last look at the Tsar, who refused to accept the status quo. He once said, "I have conquered an empire, but I have not been able to conquer myself." His determination, brilliance, and sheer force of will reshaped Russia forever. Tonight, let the spirit of Peter the Great guide your dreams, filling them with ambition, resilience, and the courage to embrace change. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. King Solomon, the wisest king of all. Let us journey through the life and legend of King Solomon, the ruler whose wisdom, wealth, and power became the stuff of legend. His story is one of divine gifts, grand constructions, and timeless proverbs, a tale of a king who sought understanding above all else. Close your eyes and step into a world of golden palaces, sacred temples, and the wisdom that shaped a kingdom. Solomon was born around 990 BC, the son of King David and Bathsheba. His birth followed a dramatic and controversial chapter in Israel's history, as Sheba had been the wife of Uriah before David's intervention. Despite this, Solomon was chosen as David's heir, bypassing his older brothers. As King David's health declined, a power struggle ensued. His son Adoniah attempted to seize the throne, but with the support of the prophet Nathan and Solomon's mother David declared Solomon his rightful successor. In a grand ceremony, Solomon was anointed king, securing his place as ruler of Israel. Shortly after ascending to the throne, Solomon had a dream in which God appeared to him, offering to grant him anything he desired instead of requesting wealth or power. Solomon humbly asked for wisdom to govern his people justly. Pleased with his selflessness, God granted Solomon unparalleled wisdom, along with riches and honor beyond compare. His intelligence became legendary, attracting rulers and scholars from distant lands to seek his counsel. One of his most famous judgments involved two women who both claimed to be the mother of the same baby. In a test of true maternal love, Solomon suggested cutting the child in two, knowing that the real mother would rather give up her child than see him harmed. The wisdom of his verdict solidified his reputation as a just and discerning ruler. One of Solomon's greatest achievements was the construction of the first temple in Jerusalem, fulfilling his father David's dream of building a permanent home for the Ark of the Covenant. This magnificent temple was adorned with gold, cedarwood, and sacred carvings, designed to honor God and unite the people of Israel. The project took 7 years to complete, with materials sourced from across the known world, including Lebanon's famed cedars and vast quantities of gold and precious stones. The temple became the spiritual heart of Israel, a place of pilgrimage and divine worship for generations. Under Solomon's reign, Israel reached new heights of prosperity, becoming a center of trade and diplomacy. His vast wealth enabled grand architectural projects, and his influence extended across the ancient world. One of the most famous episodes of his reign was the visit of the Queen of Sheba, a mysterious ruler from a distant land, possibly Ethiopia or Arabia. Intrigued by tales of his wisdom, she brought rich gifts of spices, gold, and jewels to test his intelligence. After witnessing his wisdom firsthand and marveling at the splendor of his court, she declared that Solomon's greatness exceeded even the rumors she had heard. Their meeting became a symbol of knowledge, diplomacy, and the exchange of cultures. Despite his legendary wisdom, Solomon's later years were marked by excess and spiritual decline. He took hundreds of wives and concubines, many of whom were from foreign nations and worshipped different gods. Under their influence, he allowed the construction of temples to pagan deities, straying from his devotion to God. As a consequence, God foretold that Solomon's kingdom would be divided after his death. Though Israel remained prosperous during his lifetime, internal strife and resentment grew among his people. Solomon reigned for 40 years, but upon his death, his empire fractured. His son Rehoboam inherited the throne, but his harsh rule led to rebellion, splitting the kingdom into Israel in the north and Judah in the south. Though his kingdom ultimately fractured, Solomon's legacy endured. He is credited with writing much of the Book of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the poetic Song of Solomon, works that continue to inspire and guide people to this day. His temple, though later destroyed, remained a symbol of faith and devotion. The wisdom attributed to him became a model for just leadership, and his name remains synonymous with insight, judgment, and understanding. Even today, the story of Solomon reminds us that wisdom is the greatest treasure of all, but even the wisest among us must guard against the temptations of power and wealth. As our journey through Solomon's world comes to an end, take one last look at the king who sought wisdom above all else. He once said, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge." His reign was one of splendor and enlightenment, but also a cautionary tale of excess and human fallibility. Tonight, let the spirit of King Solomon guide your dreams, filling them with wisdom, understanding, and the pursuit of a just heart. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Cleopatra, the last queen of Egypt. Let us journey through the life and legend of Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt, and one of the most fascinating figures in history. Her story is one of intelligence, power, and romance, a tale of a queen who captivated two of Rome's greatest leaders and fought to preserve her kingdom. Close your eyes and step into a world of gilded palaces, secret political dealings, and a woman who defied the odds to leave her mark on history. Cleopatra was born in 69 BC to the ruling Toic dynasty, a Greek family that had governed Egypt since the days of Alexander the Great. Unlike most of her ancestors, she embraced Egyptian culture, even learning to speak the native language, a rarity among the Greek rulers of Egypt. Her father, Ptolemy XII, was an unpopular ruler, and upon his death Cleopatra ascended the throne at just 18 years old, ruling alongside her younger brother Ptolemy XIII as co-ruler. However, palace intrigue and power struggles soon erupted, forcing Cleopatra into exile, but she was not a woman to be easily defeated. In 48 BC, Cleopatra saw an opportunity to reclaim her throne when Julius Caesar, Rome's most powerful general, arrived in Egypt. With her kingdom in turmoil, she needed his support. According to legend, she had herself smuggled into Caesar's chambers, rolled up in a carpet, making a dramatic and unforgettable entrance. Cleopatra's intelligence, charm, and political acumen won Caesar over with his military backing. She defeated her brother's forces, and Ptolemy XIII drowned in the Nile. While trying to flee, Cleopatra was restored as queen of Egypt, now ruling alongside her youngest brother Ptolemy XIV. Cleopatra and Caesar became lovers, and in 47 BC she gave birth to their son, Caesarion Little Caesar. She traveled to Rome with him, solidifying her alliance with Caesar. However, when Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC, Cleopatra returned to Egypt, knowing that her protector was gone and the future was uncertain. Following Caesar's death, Rome descended into civil war. Two men emerged as the dominant figures: Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, and Mark Anani, one of Caesar's most trusted generals. Cleopatra allied herself with Antony, meeting him in 41 BC under legendary circumstances. She sailed to meet him on a magnificent barge dressed as the goddess Aphrodite, draped in golden perfume, enchanting Antony. From the moment they met, their relationship was not just romantic, it was political. Cleopatra needed Antony's support to maintain Egypt's independence, and he needed her wealth to fund his campaigns. Together they ruled as a power couple of the ancient world. They had 3 children and formed an alliance that threatened Rome itself. Cleopatra envisioned an empire where Egypt and Rome could rule together, restoring the might of the East. Back in Rome, Octavian saw Cleopatra and Antony as a threat. He launched a propaganda campaign portraying Cleopatra as a scheming seductress who had bewitched Antony and sought to undermine Rome. The rivalry escalated into all-out war. In 31 BC, Octavian's forces met Antony and Cleopatra's navy at the Battle of Actium. Their fleet was overwhelmed, and their fate was sealed. Antony and Cleopatra fled to Egypt, where they made a final stand, realizing defeat was inevitable. Antony fell on his sword, believing Cleopatra was already dead when she found him. Dying, she held him in her arms as he took his final breath. Octavian marched into Egypt, determined to take Cleopatra captive and parade her through Rome as a trophy. Rather than suffer such humiliation, Cleopatra chose to end her own life. According to legend, she had an Egyptian cobra smuggled into her chamber, allowing it to bite her. Whether this story is true or not, she died on August 12, 30 BC at the age of 39. With her death, Egypt fell under Roman rule, marking the end of the Toic dynasty and the last independent reign of ancient Egypt. Cleopatra's legacy is one of power, intelligence, and resilience. She was not merely a seductress or a pawn in Rome's games. She was a shrewd politician, a brilliant linguist, and a woman who commanded respect in a world dominated by men. Her story has been immortalized in art, literature, and film, from Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra to Hollywood epics. Her name remains a symbol of femininity, strength, and political cunning. Though her empire fell, her legend endures, whispering through the sands of Egypt, in the ruins of Alexandria, and in the hearts of those who dream of power, love, and destiny. As our journey through Cleopatra's world comes to an end, take one last look at the queen who defied empires. She once said, "I will not be triumphed over." Her reign was one of seduction and strategy, of love and war, but above all of an unbreakable will. Tonight, let the spirit of Cleopatra guide your dreams, filling them with ambition, courage, and the fire of a queen who refused to be forgotten. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor. Let us journey through the life and legacy of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor whose wisdom and stoicism shaped the ages. His story is one of leadership, philosophy, and inner strength, a tale of a ruler who governed with reason, justice, and a relentless pursuit of virtue. Close your eyes and step into a world of marble palaces, fierce battles, and the mind of a man who sought peace in a turbulent world. Marcus Aurelius was born in 121 in Rome into a wealthy and influential family. From a young age he displayed a profound interest in learning and philosophy. He was adopted by his uncle Emperor Antoninus Pacis, who groomed him to be his successor. Raised in the imperial court, Marcus was educated by the finest tutors in literature, rhetoric, law, and most importantly Stoic philosophy. Under the guidance of Junius Rusticus, he became deeply committed to the Stoic ideals of reason, duty, and self-control, which would later define his reign. Unlike other princes raised in luxury, Marcus was humble, disciplined, and introspective. He wore plain clothing, slept on a simple bed, and embraced the Stoic practice of finding contentment through virtue and wisdom. His deep reflections and philosophical pursuits were evident even in his youth, earning him the nickname Verisim, the most truthful one. In 161, upon the death of Antonine as pious, Marcus Aurelius ascended to the throne, sharing power with his adopted brother Lucius Vies. It was the first time in Roman history that two emperors ruled jointly, symbolizing unity and stability despite their contrasting personalities, Marcus being serious and philosophical while Lucius was more hedonistic and carefree. They maintained a harmonious co-rule. Marcus handled governance and legal matters while Lucius led military campaigns in the east. Their reign was soon tested by a series of calamities. The Parthian War broke out in the east, threatening Rome's eastern provinces. A devastating plague brought back by returning soldiers swept through the empire, killing thousands. The Germanic tribes began launching invasions along the northern frontiers, challenging Rome's defenses. Through these crises, Marcus demonstrated remarkable resilience and leadership, maintaining stability and unity in the empire. Unlike emperors who sought glory and conquest, Marcus ruled with justice, humility, and reason. He believed in leading by example, showing compassion even to his enemies, and governing with fairness. His meditations are a testament to his Stoic beliefs, emphasizing acceptance of fate and nature's order, the importance of self-discipline and inner peace, the pursuit of virtue and wisdom above of material wealth, the recognition of the impermanence of life and fame. He wrote these reflections during military campaigns, often intense, along the battlefield, reminding himself to remain steadfast, calm, and rational. Regardless of external chaos, his writings were deeply personal, never meant for publication, making them a rare glimpse into the mind of a philosopher king. For much of his reign, Marcus was consumed by the Maram-Manic Wars, a series of brutal conflicts along the northern frontiers of the empire. The Germanic tribes, sensing Roman weakness due to the plague, launched invasions that threatened Italy itself. Despite his philosophical nature, Marcus proved to be a capable military leader. He reorganized the army, personally led his troops, and secured several hard-fought victories. The wars were long and grueling, testing his endurance and resolve. Amidst the battles, he continued his philosophical reflections, finding solace in Stoic teachings. He reminded himself that suffering was a part of life's natural order, and that true strength lay in mastering one's emotions. The conflicts also inspired his vision of a united empire. He began integrating defeated tribes into Roman society, offering them land in exchange for Loyalty thus maintaining peace through diplomacy and inclusion in 180, a while still. Campaigning along the Danube. Marcus Aurelius fell ill on his deathbed. He summoned his son Commodus and advised him on ruling with virtue and wisdom, but Marcus feared his son lacked the character to lead wisely. On March 17, 180 AD, Marcus Aurelius passed away. His death marking the end of the Pax Romana, a long period of peace and prosperity for the Roman Empire. His soldiers mourned him deeply, for he was not just their emperor but a wise and just leader. His son Commodus inherited the throne, but his corrupt rule led to political turmoil, ushering in the decline of the Roman Empire. Yet Marcus's legacy endured through his writings, and his example as the ideal philosopher. King Marcus Aurelius's meditations remain a cornerstone of Stoic philosophy, influencing leaders, scholars, and thinkers throughout history. His teachings on virtue, reason, and acceptance continue to inspire those seeking strength and wisdom in the face of adversity. He is remembered as the last of the 5 good emperors, a ruler who balanced power with humility, war with wisdom, and authority with introspection. His life exemplifies the Stoic ideal of a just, rational, and virtuous existence. Even today, his words resonate with timeless truths, guiding readers on the journey to inner peace and self-mastery. As our journey through Marcus Aurelius's world comes to an end, take one last look at the emperor who ruled with wisdom and humility. He once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." His reign was one of courage and contemplation of power, tempered by philosophy. Tonight, let the spirit of Marcus Aurelius guide your dreams, filling them with strength, wisdom, and the pursuit of virtue. Sweet dreams, dear traveler of historical wonders.